Call this meeting to order, and we will go to roll call.
Councilmember Klovstad?
Here.
Councilmember Pallavi? No, I'm sorry, Vice Mayor Pallavi.
I'm also still here.
Mayor Romack?
Here.
Councilmember Zabriskie?
Here.
And Councilmember Henderson is noted as absent. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kelly. We will now head to the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you all. All right, up next, we have public comment. This is an opportunity for any member of the public to make a comment on any item that is not on the agenda. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes each. And I will note there's a timer over here. We will cut you off at the 3-minute mark. I will also add we do have comment cards in the back. So we do ask anyone who makes a comment to please fill out a comment card so we have your name correctly. I will also remind everyone that since none of the items that will be brought up in public comment are agendized, the council cannot discuss or take any action on any of the items you bring up, but know that we are listening and appreciate you attending and making your voices heard. So with that, I would welcome anyone who would like to make a comment. Please come on up to the podium. Please state your name, and again, 3 minutes. And if there's ample amount of folks here this evening, so if there's a few people, feel free to line up so that way we can be efficient in our time. Hit the button first. Sorry, I forgot that.
It's okay. Mic check 1, 2. I can talk really loud, so it's okay. Hi, I'm April Cole. I'm the campaign director for the, do you want me to, okay, there we go. The Friends of the Truckee Library. And I am here tonight regarding the council's recent direction to change your stated council goals to more broad language, which would specifically remove the new library as a stated goal, as you have right there. Number 4 under infrastructure. This came as a real surprise to us, so I thought I'd take the opportunity with public comment to just jump right on it and start the conversation, because I really think it's a good conversation to have. One small change in language can have a big impact on a project like this. As you'll see, I have some amazing people here. People who are passionate about the new library, who have been volunteering their time and expertise to support the project, who have very unique perspectives on the implications of this language change. So I just really appreciate taking the time to be able to hear our comments and to start the conversation. And as always, I just appreciate the opportunity to have you guys listen, and I really do feel like we're heard. So thank you guys.
Thank you, April.
Hello, happy Valentine's Day. My name is Debbie Worley, and I'm a retired publisher, and I'm a full-time resident of Truckee. And I'm here tonight because it came to my attention that at a town council workshop in January, there was a suggestion to change the language of town council goal number 4 regarding investments in infrastructure. I want to comment on the importance of keeping the original language that spells out the new library as part of key infrastructure and community connectivity. I believe public libraries are a vital contributor to a town's diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts. They can bring people together with equal opportunities and access to valuable resources and experiences. For example, I currently volunteer at the Truckee Library in the library literacy program, tutoring ESL adult learners. Our existing library lacks the quiet space and privacy for effective tutoring, nor are there tables and chairs for this purpose. There's often a waiting list to join the program. A larger new library could expand the effectiveness of this valuable outreach. In addition, last week I attended a Latino cookbook signing at the library. This event was celebrating a bilingual cookbook written by our Latino library community and published by library staff. Most of the roughly 60 people attending the reception had to stand because there just weren't enough enough space for chairs or tables for that type of event. A new library could easily host an event like this. Lastly, a new Truckee library will make tech resources and a stable internet available to the whole community, bringing state-of-the-art connectivity to kids, adults, and seniors. This improved availability of printers, computers, and tech support could make equal access a reality. A new library and its infrastructure will provide long-lasting diversity, equity, and inclusion, and many other benefits to our town. So again, I'm here to comment and ask that the Town Council keep the original language of goal number 4 regarding investment in key infrastructure and community connectivity. When you articulate the new library in this goal, it demonstrates that Town Council sees this project as one of the primary vehicles to achieve and expand diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts in our community and the region. Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie.
Good evening. Thanks for allowing the comments. My name is Mike Rogers. I reside at 11638 Hennis Road in beautiful Grays Crossing. I want to speak to the issue of broadening the language on the Town Council priorities statement. As many of you know, one of the library's central funding sources will be grants from state and federal governments. These grants are a big part of the funding equation, or puzzle, if you will, for the new library. In fact, the town, county, and Friends of the Truckee Library have already been diligently working together to create grant strategies for the library. It's important to note because tangible evidence of committed partnerships, specifically with the town, is common in grant criteria. For example, the state's Strategic Resources Grant Program explicitly identifies libraries among the community assets to be funded as they can serve as community resilience centers. During disruptive periods such as power outages, extreme cold or heat, intense smoke, and these centers can consist of in the form of a library. The library will act as an important resource for people in these extreme disasters. In these grant submittals, we must continue to have the ability to point to the town as a committed partner in action and in word. It's important to demonstrate the clear intention of the partners, including the town, to support the new library. Therefore, unless and until there is a substantial reason for not listing the library as a priority, please leave the language as is, so that we can collectively mount the best possible case for the funding opportunities that we are currently pursuing and new ones that we might pursue in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
Good evening, council members. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Dan Beringer. I'm a homeowner here in Truckee and retired tech executive, long-term supporter of conservation, both here in Truckee and in Africa. And I am a enthusiastic supporter of the library project. I'm going to speak to that same point. The perspective they asked me to speak on was that of consistent with my 20 years experience in fundraising for my various nonprofits that I work with. And I'd like you to consider the perspective, not just the grant agencies that Mike talked about, but also of the private fundraising organizations and people that we're going to be tapping into to fund this very important project. So all of these, I'm sure you're aware of the process as we contact these major donors and community foundations, private foundations, there's a due diligence phase that's very important. And the first place they're going to come is to the town of Truckee to look. Yeah, they'll be looking at the county, but Truckee is where they're going to come first. Landing on the homepage is probably an early step in that due diligence process. And looking at those 4 or 5 goals that you guys have is going to be early as well. Now we've looked and see this proposal for removing the specific reference to the library from goal number 4. I'd like you to consider what message does it send if the new library isn't even referenced in the top objectives of the city councils? So I think that removing that specific reference from the goals and replacing it with kind of a general reference of infrastructure, you're basically sending the wrong message, right? It's a signal that the town might be backtracking on its commitment to the library. It's a signal of a little less priority, a little bit less focus on it. And right at this point in time, it's the wrong time to send that particular message. We are in contact with a lot of potential donors. The due diligence is starting to go. We're building momentum for raising funds for the library. And the timing of removing this very important word from your goals is critical. I think we're trying to build momentum, not trying to stop it. So I would respectfully submit that you keep the word library in your goals. Thank you for that opportunity to speak to you.
Thank you, Dan.
Greetings. My name is Patty Baird. I'm a retired local business owner and a proud Truckee citizen. In March of 2021, the Truckee Town Council adopted 5 priorities to help guide the work of town staff. Recently, as others have mentioned, there was a directive by council to change the 4th goal of your priorities for the purpose, as you state, of achieving literary continuity with other goals and to broaden the goal itself. I, too, am asking that the Town Council retain the present language that references the new library, bike trails, and transit alternatives, versus modifying this priority to a wide-ranging catch-all statement of invest in key infrastructures and community connectivity to enhance the quality of life for everyone. The overarching theme of the Town Council's priority is about interconnectivity. For me, when I read your priorities, it illustrates the importance of social inclusion. Social inclusion is often defined as the participatory, authentic, and accountable manner in which institutions and government uphold and reinforce the principles of access, equity, and as a result, provides inclusion and opportunities for all. This is one of the hallmarks of a thriving community, and institutions best demonstrate these levels of inclusion through their commitment and investments for social infrastructure. While I can understand the thought process to change the wording of this priority, you must remember that words are powerful as well as visual. Descriptive word usage clarifies the intention. When language is too broad, framing any vision with actual tangible outcomes can become muddled, or worse, trapped in a vat of inertia and unintended consequences. Semantically, invest in key infrastructures and community connectivity means just that, and pragmatically, it still achieves literary continuity. Leaving the priority as it was originally written bolsters the Town Council's stated goals. Before retirement, I worked with many of you advocating a destination management plan. In my research, resort communities that were most in balance were those that prioritized the needs of their citizens first and invested in social infrastructure. Why? It's because social infrastructure bestows dignity and opportunity to everyone equally and nourishes a community. Please be intentional in communicating your recognition in this truth by continuing to identify a new Truckee Library as a priority in this most visible of public documents. Thank you.
Thank you, Patty.
Hello, good evening. Happy Love Day. My name is Laura Santamaria. I am not going to address the library, although I would love to talk to someone because I think it's very important and I've been wanting to get involved. I'm actually going to address the traffic in town, and I know many of you might shake your head and say, yeah, we're working on it, but I feel it's very important to keep it top of mind right now. Both my husband and I were born and raised locals here in Truckee, and we have 2 little boys that we hope to continue to raise here and bring them or give them the upbringing that we had. But daily, it is becoming more difficult to carry on our day-to-day lives. We live on the west side of town in Armstrong Track, which has proven very difficult this season and the past few years. There have been numerous times and exponentially more this season, that we were literally not able to live our normal life. I've spent several $100s more in childcare this year alone, just by not being able to make it home to my kids, and I have to pay the babysitter extra every time that happens. It's taken me over 2 hours to go a stretch that should take 10 minutes to get home. Because traffic coming from Palisades and North Star, get onto Donner Pass, and then it just becomes a parking lot. There have been 4 days this season alone that I haven't been able to make it into work because I get to the bottom of my hill in either direction on Donner Pass, I can't turn onto. And I've sat there for over a half an hour trying to turn onto Donner Pass, and I can't. My kids have missed doctor's appointments with pink eye because I couldn't even make it to the doctor's office. And rescheduling that is a whole nother can of worms that I don't want to open. I understand there's a lot of pieces, moving pieces that go into this issue. And I know, and I'm so happy to see it coming to mind for so many people because it is a serious issue. And I'm really tired of the answer being we don't have the answer. We as a community need to find an answer and work together as a team. There's a lot of smart people in this town, and I think we all really need to come together and figure out a solution because our town cannot keep operating, or lack thereof, not operating in this fashion. So, thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Is there anyone else who would like to make a public comment? Seeing none, we will close public comment. Thank you, everyone, for attending this evening. All right, up next, we have our presentations. 5.1 is the introduction of Tahoe Truckee Sanitation Agency General Manager, Richard Palante. Richard, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor, Council, for letting me come tonight and introduce myself. Thank you to Jen for the invite as well. So I've been going around to all of our member districts, so decided to share kind of the same presentation that I've been sharing with them. So I'll just run through that. If you have any questions of me, feel free to ask. I've been with the agency for, it'll be 5 years in April. Was a maintenance manager prior to filling the role on an interim basis for the general manager, and then being fortunate enough to be selected for the permanent position. So just want to share our mission statement. I'm not going to go through each point, but you'll see that it ties into my priorities that I'll be sharing here later in the presentation. Our process flow, again, I'm not going to bore you with a lot of extra stuff, but that's what I like to hear. It's cool, right? Opportunity, if you have any questions on it, I'd be happy to answer those. But I've been sharing this and basically extending an invite to anyone that's interested to come out and do a tour of the facility. Our operators can walk you through this process flow and give you great detail and take your whole afternoon explaining everything to you. So I want to extend an invite. Please let us know if you'd like to come. I would suggest spring or summer, as we're inundated with snow, as many parts of town are. There we go. Staffing. It's kind of slow. There we go. Just sharing our staffing org chart with everybody. Between the facility, the TRI, which is the Truckee River Interceptor, we have well over $1 billion in assets. But the reality is our staffing is our major asset. You guys know that. You run a town. These are the people that get it done every day and make that mission statement come true. So included a few pictures of our staff at work, some unique stuff there. I like to highlight the one on the left there and the guys in the yellow suit. Those are guys down in a digester doing a routine cleaning. Probably one of the dirtier jobs out there, and we did not get Mike Rowe, unfortunately. Some of the other staff that we have out there, electricians, our office staff, we did a Cancer Awareness Month, which was a nice event for everybody to partake in. And this is really the meat of what I've been presenting, is what my priorities are, working with my board of directors. Compliance is always number one. We want to make sure that we're meeting or exceeding our waste discharge requirements, and no SSOs on the TRI. As I said earlier today when I did a presentation, I don't really want to be national news or international news. Safety is another huge one that we're going to continue to build on. At the time I did the presentation, we were at 3,869 days. We've exceeded that a little bit more since I put this together. Do the math real quick for you. That's 10 and a half years without a lost time injury, which is pretty unheard of in the wastewater world. Collaboration. I manage with open bidirectional communication. I like to get input from staff, make them part of the process. We have a lot of intelligent staff out there. It would be foolish not to get their input as we move forward with things. Succession planning plays into that. We're going to have some turnover of our upper staff over the next several years. We're working to develop internal staff as well as train our supervisory and management staff and open up that training to the other staff that's interested in promoting in the future so that they're prepared and we can start growing staff from within. It's getting extremely difficult, as you guys probably know, to recruit staff from other areas. Agency transparency. As I tell everybody, I'm not a kick the can down the road kind of guy. So I'm going to be very transparent with our board on the issues that we have so we can address them now. I don't want to defer those to the next general manager that comes in. Transparency with staff, frequent meetings and input from them. I conduct really regular staff meetings, getting input from staff, keeping them up to date on all of the things that are coming our way. And then with the community, we've been kind of out of sight, out of mind for many years, I think. We want to reestablish ourselves in the community. We do a valued service for the community, and we want to make sure everyone knows we're out there and what we're doing. Granted, most people just want to flush and see it go away, and we understand that too. Strategic plan, right now we don't have one. I'm going to focus on doing two different strategic plans, one short term, because as I mentioned, we have staff turnover coming in the next 3 to 5 years, and then do a long-term one for that staff that's going to hopefully move into our shoes as we walk out. We've already got a strategic plan for them. They've helped develop it, and they have a future set for what they need to do. Fiscal responsibility, that one goes without saying anymore, I think. We have a lot of CIP projects coming, so we're going to be working really hard to make sure those are delivered with minimal change orders, yet receiving the product at the end of the day that we need to best do our job. And then again, a reestablished agency in the community, participating in appropriate community outreach events, collaboration with other wastewater agencies. The one downside to being up here is in a small resort area. A lot of the technology in our world gets developed in the larger facilities, such as East Bay Mud, Sacramento. Stretch out to those facilities, send staff out for tours so they can connect with staff there. And then that way, when you see unique issues rise, you have people you can reach out to and collaborate with to resolve the issues. Plus, they get to see what technologies are out there. And then participate with our peer groups like CWEA, which is the California Water Environmental Association. We now have a staff member that's on the board, was just appointed to the board last week. So participating in those events, getting more involved with local trainings, et cetera, with them and being more of that community as well. So that's really the crutch of my goals. Again, appreciate the opportunity to come and introduce myself to you guys. Again, extend an offer for a tour anytime. Let us know. Just reach out. You can call the office, and I'd be happy to coordinate. Any questions for me? I kind of flew through that, but.
Thank you so much, Richard, on how everything works. There were a lot of words I've never seen before, so that's fascinating. And typically we do all of our presentations first and then come back to council for questions. So if you don't mind just sitting down, we only have one more and then we'll come back.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much. So with that, we will head over to Jen Calloway, our town manager, for the town manager report.
Great. Thank you. Good evening and happy Valentine's Day or Love Day. I love that. That's a better way of saying it to everybody. I have a little bit longer of report tonight, so bear with me if you don't mind. First, I think we wanted to take a few minutes and address the traffic conversation that's happening in our community and impacting our community. Everybody is keenly aware of it, especially if you live here. You're being affected by it almost every day and certainly every weekend to some degree. So I'm going to start out and then ask Chief Renfro if he can give a brief update on some of the different tactics that we're trying and strategies to that we're working with CHP on. But I think it's important to really just recognize, we understand, we're hearing the frustration. We are equally frustrated. It impacts everybody's employees, everybody's life every day, our own employees here at the town as well. So it's not something that we are not paying attention to, and we are trying to collaborate with the partners on solutions. But that gets me to the next point of there's a lot of partners involved here and a lot of areas that are impacting the town that are outside of our ownership control, and thus we have limited ability to influence change. So State Route 89, 267, 80, State Route 28, all owned by Caltrans, maintained and patrolled by CHP and Caltrans together. You know, the town owns all of our neighborhood streets, so Donner Pass Road and West River. The backups that come off of 80 onto 89 and 267 then feed into our neighborhood streets. So we're really trying to focus on the source of the backups and where those start and hoping to alleviate some of the backup into our neighborhood streets. There are a number of factors that are outside of our control, and I don't like saying that. I don't like passing the buck off, but that's the reality of this situation given the patchwork of different players involved here. One of those key players is our ski resort partners that are in Placer County and outside of not only the town limits, but the county. So what do we do about that, and how do we partner with that? We are attending weekly regular meetings with the various agencies that are involved, Caltrans, CHP, Placer County, and the ski resorts that have representations in that. We attended the, I have to read this acronym because it's a difficult one for me to remember, North Tahoe Regional Advisory Council and Olympic Valley Municipal Advisory Council, otherwise referred to as the RAC and the MAC, apparently. That was hosted by Placer County last week, Thursday night, over at the lake. We attended that as a audience member. The ski resorts did have representation there. And really the takeaways from that discussion were some recognition that traffic patterns had shifted over the past 40 years that maybe we weren't preparing for or envisioning at the time when those discussions were happening, supporting alternative transportation, resort traffic management strategies, and adaptive traffic management. But really, at the end of the day, there's long-term solutions that are perhaps viable, adding a commuter lane of some sort, center lane for ski resort traffic, but those are really long-term solutions. There is not an apparent solution in the short term, other than working with the ski resorts to address destination management strategies, parking reservations, ski pass sales, and a lot of that is proprietary information. We don't even know and cannot get how many passes are being sold. That's not something they're sharing. So couple that on top of the traffic congestion, we can't even plan from an evacuation standpoint. So, and I share that to say that we are actively involved and we're frustrated as well, just from a planning perspective. But we are continuing to meet with the ski resorts. We will continue the conversation, and we are pushing for those active destination management strategies, that they need to employ those and be good neighbors as they're impacting communities outside of just the Olympic Valley, Alpine Meadows, and North Star. In addition, we need to continue our conversations, and we are with Placer County. There's some new developments coming before the board for approval and conversation. thoughtful consideration about workforce housing, VMT reduction, transportation. Those really need to be considered in those conversations as those developments move forward in order to not exacerbate this problem in another 20 years where we're even having a bigger impact, where the solutions we're working on today might not address that bigger impact going forward. Those are all conversations we're engaged in. We're committed to continuing to be engaged in, and we're committed to trying different strategies that can maybe help mitigate to some degree. But by and large, we're dealing with congestion from areas outside of the town boundaries, from businesses outside of the town boundaries that we have very limited ability to control and direct. So I thought it was important to acknowledge we hear the frustration, we share the frustration, and we will continue to try to be nimble and work with our partners and trying to come up with solutions. We have staff out on the weekends, our patrol staff, our emergency management coordinator was out on Saturday trying to work with CHP. And Chief, if you could just talk about a few of the strategies you've been trying recently to help mitigate some of the traffic, that would be great.
Yeah, thank you, Jen. I think you framed that really well as far as all of the partners and everybody working together to try to address this issue. There are some challenges, no doubt about it. We have some short-term goals that we're looking at, and what that basically translates to is traffic control and actual staff on the ground funneling these masses of cars that are coming through our jurisdiction. How do we do that the most efficient way, and how do we do that the most safest way? The big concern that we have is the backup on Interstate 80 when you have traffic that is at a dead stop. That is when you have traffic that's approaching that other traffic that's at a dead stop at 65, 70 miles an hour plus creates a danger. And that's something that we're trying to pay attention to. And the way we're doing that is trying to move as much traffic as we can southbound 89 South through the mouse hole. With that philosophy in mind, that also restricts the amount of flow on West River Street. And we understand that. When we would flow West River Street and stop the southbound traffic, we would see large gaps in cars coming from West River onto southbound 89, which would reduce the amount of flow and become inefficient. So we are starting to give priority to 89 South traffic to alleviate that traffic congestion on the interstate. And we're experiencing some success. Once again, it's hard to tell because every weekend is different. You throw some snow in there, you throw a little bit of weather, that throws everything off. But we have seen some success in that our roadways are clearing out around 9:30. And that's much better than what we've seen in the past. This is just 89 South traffic, not to mention what's on 267 or, Sunday evening traffic that's headed westbound. So just talking about the ski traffic that's coming into town, we're using more CMS boards and trailers. We're trying to get out on social media, leave early, bring your patients, and also take 89 South because that's where we can get the masses of cars through that intersection the most efficient way.
Great, thank you. So just a little bit of a brief update on traffic and more to have the conversation that in recognition that we hear the concern, appreciate the concern and share in the concern, and we'll continue to try to work with our regional partners on solutions. But those solutions really do stem from the ski resorts, at least the most immediate solutions, and having destination management policies in place. Couple other updates, if you don't mind. If you are interested in joining Chief Renfro and the Chiefs Advisory Committee, we are accepting new applications. The CAC, which we refer to the Chiefs Advisory Committee as, was originally formed September of 2021, and it's meant to be a connection to the community, to hear feedback from the community, to help inform the Chiefs' policy decisions. So FLOC is a great example, our automated license plate readers. The Chiefs Advisory Committee weighed in on that, as well as a number of other important issues regarding like the unhoused and emergency preparedness. So it's a really valuable committee to better inform the chief and his policy direction that he brings forward to council. If you're interested in applying, applications are available on the police department's website. So check that out, and we'd love to have you join in that group. a lot of public safety stuff tonight. Chief Renfro is going to be one of the featured guests at Good Morning Truckee next Tuesday at 7 a.m. here in Chambers. It is focused on our new community leaders. So joining the chief will be Sven Leff from the Truckee Donner Recreation and Parks District. He is their new general manager. Rob Etnier is the new general manager for the Airport District, and Richard Plante will be there as well. It's a new GM for TTSA. So we hope everybody can tune into that session. And then we have 3 community surveys out. So wrapping up the Donner Lake Reclaimed Art Sculpture Survey. That is still available on our website, and that is for the art that will be made out of litter that's been taken out of Donner Lake as an educational piece about the impact that we are having on the lake. There are 3 different proposals for that sculpture, some footprints, jumping fish, and a coyote. So if you're interested in weighing in on that, there's a couple of days left on that survey, and that's on our website or on social media. We are launching this week a communication survey that'll be going out on our social media as well, and that is really to gather input on how our community best receives information so that we can try to make sure we're reaching as many members of our community as possible in a really effective way and meaningful way. And then lastly, through Sunday, our single-use water bottle survey is available. You can find information about that on our social media and on our KTG, Keep Truckee Green website. And that is about the discussion that's happening currently in alignment with our sustainability goals to reduce waste, including the single-use bottles, whether that's water bottles or plastic bottles of all forms under a certain weight. So if you're interested in that, we encourage everybody to check out those surveys and give us your feedback. And that is all I have tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, we will go to council for questions or comments. Councilmember Klofstad, any questions or comments?
Yes. Let's see. On the traffic, just so we can finish that one. I think one of the points of frustration that I'm seeing in constituents is they're complaining to us about it, and we're not taking any action. But you described well the fact that we don't have the levers of power to take action on this. So to give them a sense of actually being heard, could we consider telling people, if you have specific circumstances or concerns or ideas, send them to Truckee at townoftruckee.com, and we can compile those and use those in these discussions with our partners so that we can help them understand the very specific impacts and concerns that we're hearing from our constituents?
Sure. We can think through what a receptacle would look like for that. We do monitor, it's important to point out, we do monitor our social media quite a bit, and we have seen a lot of communications on our social media. We are keeping track of what that communication is. So some of that is happening organically, but not as directly as saying, if you want to share a concern, here's where you can submit it.
I mean, this was very specific. She's being financially impacted. The health of her children is being impacted. I've had plenty of other constituents talk about, having to stay late at work because their replacement couldn't get there, and then they miss something, right? And then you read in the article in the newspaper about the concern that you can't respond to a water leak or a sewage spill or other emergencies in those areas. So there's really significant reason to take short-term action. And as you stated, I think the parking reservation concept, they've proven that they can do reservation systems. They did it under COVID. So I would really like to help them understand the specific impacts if we could. Thank you. Okay, off of that soapbox. So I do have one quick question about your, it sounds like you were talking about your personal strategic plan, a 1 and a 5 year, as well as a longer term. Do you also plan to do a facilities strategic plan?
We've actually already done that. We did a master plan, and I kind of flew over the CIPs. All of those CIPs were developed out of a master plan, and it's a 25-year master plan that we completed. So we're looking at the first 5-year chunk right now.
Awesome. Okay, I am very interested in taking a tour, but you're saying right now is not a good time.
There's just a lot of snow and a lot of slippery stuff, so you'd miss out on a lot of the good stuff.
Okay.
So if
All
you
right.
wait until we get some more snow melt, that'd be a great time.
I will email you so you have my contact information. As soon as you're ready, I'm ready.
Sounds good.
And because I would really love to see how that facility strategic plan plays.
We'd be happy to show you.
Thank you, Richard.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Pellavi.
Yeah, thanks for being here, Richard. Pleasure to meet you, and best of luck in your new job. And look forward to working with you guys as we move this forward. I don't have any questions for you. I just have a couple quick ones for Jen, unfortunately, to berate the traffic subject. But just to confirm, also for the public, the town submitted comments on the Palisades Tahoe draft EIR that came out recently. Is that accurate?
We did not submit comments on that, but we will be submitting comments when it goes back to the board for consideration.
For consideration. And do we need to potentially, I mean, I feel like some of this is coming up and it would have been a good thing for us to submit some draft EIR comments potentially on that. And I meant to follow up before that deadline, so I apologize. But do we feel like there's an added need to our legislative agenda as it pertains to cross-jurisdictional, involvement? I mean, it seems like we're sort of being sandwiched more and more and more. And, while things might not, they have different decision makers in different counties, and it just seems like our legislative agenda might need a slight updating to not just be so state and federal focused, but also to maybe look at what's happening around us more closely.
It's a good point. We are coming back with your legislative platform in coordination with your priorities and goals adoption, so we can take that into consideration when we bring that back and update that.
And maybe I would just suggest that, I don't know if we have an agreement. I know it's not on our agenda, but, taking a stab at some of the things that have been thorny that you probably think we all would agree on might be a great start rather than just starting with a blank slate if you are going to come back with that.
We'll come back with some suggestions to at least start the conversation.
That'd be great. I would only add, Danny and I, we go back and forth, Chief Renfro, excuse me, and I go back and forth. I've been a firsthand witness to a lot of the traffic on many of these busy weekends. And I do also want to speak up for our community, similar to how Councilmember Klostad did, specifically on the eastern side of our community, which seems to also be hitting a bit of a more sore topic and sore note. I think some of our folks, coming from the west, getting off on 89 South, coming from Tahoe Donner, we've been seeing that pattern sort of develop and get worse. I'm not trying to lessen that. What I think is different, and what a lot of other commenters, specifically not the one here tonight, who was on the west side of town, which we've definitely heard from, and we know the Armstrong track gets unbelievably impacted, but now the east side of town. And I would say the experiment, first of all, kudos for at least telling people to go I-80. That was a great start. So we're making progress, and I see that, and I want to applaud that. From personal firsthand experience, that turned into a 50 extra minute throughway. So I would say it failed quite bluntly, and that the 5 and 2, speaking specifically to 5 minutes on 89 South and 2 minutes on West River, seems to have been the most successful. I'm not a traffic engineer. I was not the CHP person standing at the intersection. I find it incredibly challenging to believe that the flow wasn't consistent enough to warrant. I think that was a cop-out, excuse the pun. And I would recommend we put a little bit of a heavier finger on that one and use those CMS boards and the messaging on the freeway. If that is one of our biggest concerns, I'm okay with that. I get it. We don't want people going from 75 to 0 in 100 feet, but there's no reason why CHP, if they've been able to be so successful with their chain signs and everything else they got going on, can't move a couple CMS boards up on, I guess it would be eastbound 80 as you start to head into town. Hey, right lane is stopped, right? Start slowing down now. I mean, that we're not asking for the world here. That's stuff they can do. So I would just try to put in a vote, and I know we're not voting, but a nod to the 5 and 2. Continue to give that a chance. Continue to balance the traffic, because getting people off westbound 80, throwing them into a 2-lane roundabout that's not moving, and then condensing them to a 1-lane roundabout after they just merged into a 2-lane roundabout, that didn't work. I don't think it just didn't. It junked up that end of town even worse. So that's just my own personal reflection on my experiences and seeing what's happening out there. And I know you are well aware of those experiences, and I appreciate how responsive, at the very minimum, our town staff has been to this, and really CHP too. I think the goal is we're working on it. We're attempting to try to do the best that we can, and there are so many things out of our control. And that's a really crappy answer, and I'm sorry, but it's sort of what we got for you sometimes. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Councilmember Zabriskie.
Mr. Palante, can I ask you a question about the master plan? I would like to know what your current excess capacity is, and I assume you're always looking at a 5-day peak average in terms of demand, and then how much additional capacity do you think you need to build at the end of your 25-year horizon?
So numbers are, we're seeing flows in the 4 MGD range, million gallons a day. We do instantaneous. We also look at peaks for reporting. For example, we saw a peak of about 12 when we had the rain on snow events. We can process, we're rated for 9.6, I believe. It's 9 something, with the instantaneous of 15 million gallons. So all that really is looking in the master plan and going through it. Capacity-wise, we're pretty good. We don't really need to build anything in the near future for capacity. It's mostly a rehabilitation of existing infrastructure. The facility was built in 1975. We're hitting 50 plus years on equipment. It's just time to upgrade and do new.
Okay, what do you expect to be the increase in demand at the end of your planning horizon from what we have today?
I do not have that number off the top of my head, but I can work with Jen to get you those numbers.
Or I can look in the master plan.
Yeah, in the master plan, we just launched a brand new website, so check out our new website.
That's fine, I'll go ahead and look.
It's on there as well. So.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, I don't have anything to add on the traffic. I share the sentiment, and I'll have questions we can address outside the council meeting. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Richard, for your presentation. Appreciate that, and I look forward to a tour as well. And thank you, staff, for all you're doing and all you're trying out there, and we appreciate the update, and I support what my fellow council members have already shared regarding that. So with that, we will open it up to public comment on the presentations. So if anyone has a comment on the 2 presentations you just heard, you are welcome to come on up to the podium. Again, you will be limited to 3 minutes. Seeing none, we will close public comment on our presentations. Thank you very much. And thanks again, Richard. All right, we will move on next to our consent calendar. We've got a few items on here this evening. Item 6.1, minutes from the January 24th, 2023 regular meeting and the January 26th, 2023 council workshop. Item 6.2, the short-term rental ordinance update. Item 6.3, a West River Streetscape project, C1703 Regional Surface Transportation Program Funds allocation request. Item 6.4, Construction Material Engineers, Inc. contract award for West River Streetscape C1703. Then we have item 6.5, contract amendment with Technology Design Associates for audio upgrade in the council chambers. Item 6.6, the Lease to Locals Program Guidelines Revisions. Item 6.7, authorize extending purchasing limit of vendor E+. And item 6.8, Town Attorney Performance-Based Pay Increase. And the recommended action, which I need to read out loud this evening, is to approve Resolution 2023-05, awarding a one-time non-base pay compensation of $12,148.81 to Town Attorney Andrew Morse. All right. With that, I will ask if any of my fellow council members would like to pull an item. Seeing none, any staff members like to pull a consent item?
No, thank you.
And I will open it up to the public. Would any members of the public like to pull an item off consent? Seeing none, I will bring it back to council. Would anyone like to make a motion?
Sorry. No. I'll make a motion that we move consent.
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? That passes unanimously. Thank you very much. All right, we are headed into our first discussion item for the evening. We have item 7.1, application number 2022-00000118, APL, Faruda SB9 Urban Lot Split Appeal. And Lucas will be presenting this evening.
All right, good evening, council members. My name is Lucas Cannell. I'm an assistant planner here with the town, and I'm here to present the Faruda Urban Lot Split Appeal for your review tonight. The way that this appeal hearing format will work is that we'll have a staff presentation, which you're hearing now. The appellant will have up to 15 minutes to present their own material, council questions for staff and appellant, public comment, and then an appellant rebuttal, which will be up to 5 minutes. The appellant may not present new evidence or testimony at the appeal hearing unless the appellant can demonstrate that new information was not previously available to the party, or the party could not have participated in the review process because they could not have known about the review process. Tonight, the town council is hearing a request to remove 3 conditions of an approval that was required for the recordation of a Senate Bill 9 urban lot split. The project was originally approved on February 23, 2022, with conditions that were required to be satisfied prior to recording the lot split. The appellant has previously appealed these conditions to the Planning Commission on September 20th of last year, but it was denied. The town council's role tonight will be to determine if staff has correctly interpreted the town's development code, correctly applied the development code, and in general, whether the community development director determination was consistent with the development code. The project parcel is located at 14379 East Reed Avenue on the north side of Donner Lake in the Lakeview subdivision. In 2016, a permit for a new residence was approved at 14379 East Reed Avenue. An earlier version of the permit had removed a proposed encroachment onto Donner Avenue on the south side of the parcel, but the final approved plan set had the encroachment added back in, and due to it being on the approved plan set, a 24 by 10 foot parking pad was allowed to be constructed and was given a legal non-conforming status. At some point between 2016 and the SB9 urban lot split application being submitted, this parking pad was extended to 50 feet long, which is the entire width of the encroachment, without town approval. The first of the 3 conditions being appealed is to bring this parking pad back into conformance with the approved plan set. The appellant maintains that this is a separate issue and should not be tied to the proposed urban lot split. The approved parking pad was considered legal non-conforming. Although this secondary encroachment was permitted, lots under 2 acres in size are only allowed 1 encroachment. Additionally, the pad has now been expanded to 50 feet, and the public improvements and engineering standards requires that encroachments not exceed 24 feet. Staff is requesting that it be restored to its original approved state as enabled by Senate Bill 9 and the town's development code. The second condition being appealed was a request from the Truckee Donner Public Utility District to survey the property, and if the utility lines along Donner Avenue are found to be on the property, as opposed to in the public right-of-way, A public utility easement should be recorded over them so that they will be protected in perpetuity. The appellant states that the electrical facility easement is not a town issue, and the utility district erred when they placed the poles on the property in the first place. Truckee's development code requires the town to ensure easements for the provisions of public services and facilities. Although the town is allowed to request an easement at the behest of a local utility provider, this item has been resolved and is no longer required for the recordation of the SB9 urban lot split. The third condition being appealed is the requirement that a legal description be submitted for each parcel, as well as a final map created by a licensed land surveyor or qualified engineer. These documents would then be used to create the new parcel. The appellant has discussed requesting a waiver for the final map, but this could not be permitted by the development code. Waivers need to be approved by the zoning administrator, and this project was approved ministerial at a staff level. The appellant states that it is redundant to require both items, and the original parcel was surveyed as part of the Lakeview subdivision. Although the appellant supplied the town with a tentative map as part of the application, it does not meet the requirements to be recorded and subdivide his property. A final map is the mechanism that is used to legally subdivide the parcel. Legal descriptions and recorded maps are important documents for future homeowners as well as agencies or departments that are trying to determine property lines or easements. Both the Development Code and SB9 legislation require the recordation of a final map to have this information on record for future decision making. Staff recommends that the council uphold the original approval along with all conditions of approval and deny the appeal. Staff believes that all conditions were appropriately applied when the project was approved and believe that they should be required prior to recordation of the Senate Bill 9 urban lot split. All conditions of approval are based on either SB9 legislation or the town's existing subdivision ordinances. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lucas. So I believe up next, the appellant has 15 minutes.
Hello, my name's Bob Forward. I'm the appellant. I'm kind of frustrated by the treatment I've gotten. The staff is making issues where there doesn't need to be issues. There's a couple of things, they like to use this word unpermitted, and yet a permit is not required for impervious surfacing. And they also make a point about driveways where I have a parking pad, I don't have a driveway, and the parking pad is entirely on my property. So they use the word encroachment. But Donner Avenue is a private road, and I'm not sure the town has any interest in Donner Avenue. You know, the town doesn't plow our snow. The town doesn't fill our potholes. The town doesn't put up street signs. So it's very disturbing. The biggest concern, though, is the amount of effort that I have had to put in dollars and also for the town staff when this is really a non-issue. My goal is to create an ADU and a junior ADU. And all this issue about the pavement goes away with that. But they don't want to see that. They want their pound of flesh. They want the pavement removed before I can move forward with my SBU. I mean, I've lost 6 months of construction time. And there's a lot of things in the staff report that kind of have spin or they distort things. But the big thing is it's not a driveway, it's a parking pad. It's on my property. I even put in an application for a permit to put a sports court in, so we'll call it something else, and that just gets lost in the bureaucracy. But I think the biggest thing is that in the Lakeview subdivision, these parking pads are very common. There's 84 of them throughout the subdivision. The reason is, in the subdivision, we're on a hillside. We're between Donner Lake and the interstate. The grade is about 40%. So parking in a conventional driveway like you might do in Tahoe Donner or other flatter parts of the city doesn't work in the Lakeview subdivision. The other issue is we have very narrow street right-of-ways. They're only 25 feet wide, and we only have 12 feet of pavement. And in my case, the pavement touches my property. So I'm not encroaching, as the term has been used, but it really gets convoluted when you read all the nuances or the misrepresentations or the spin. They have a story they want to tell, and when I confront them with the facts, and do I need to go through my presentation? You know, I had a packet of about 10 documents. Do I need to walk through those, or have you had time to kind of look at them?
We all received them in the packet.
Yeah, okay, so you're familiar, but my point is a permit is not required for pavement. Okay, so when they keep using this word unpermitted, how can you unpermit something that doesn't need a permit? So that's the one. The other one is it's not a driveway, and I think there's pictures there. I put my truck, you know, in the parking pad. Well, it's halfway across the street because it's a parking pad. It's not a driveway. A driveway goes somewhere. This just goes to a hillside. And then there's other representations. What I find disappointing is that why can't we just let this issue, it'll resolve itself when I get in for my SB 9 building permit. And no, the town, in fact, I'm not sure the legislation lets them take a condition like this. It's not in this section of the town's SB 9 regulations. They're kind of reaching and they're not cooperating. But the biggest thing is the amount of time it's taken of staff to deal with really a trivial issue. And what I'm doing is comment throughout the neighborhood. What I'd like to do is when I get the building permit, I'll know which pavement I want to take out, because when I put these 2 ADU units in there, I'll need parking anyhow. But anyway, I would like to continue, you know, with my pavement. My point with respect to the utility district is those comments don't have a legal standing. I mean, they should have been just advisory, you know, because relocating the lines does not provide utility service to my project, and that's what the legislation says, and that's what the town ordinance says. These wires go someplace else, but they're, you know, it should not have been a prevention from approval. Now, the third one is on the mapping, and the Truckee code lets you waive a map, and the map isn't needed by future users or owners if you have a legitimate legal description, and I've provided that, and you just do a certificate of compliance. Now, I'm an engineer. It's not a big thing to do that, but you make all the people that come behind me do that when it's unnecessary. I think the planners just don't understand how people use certificates of compliance. And there's a lot of certificates of compliance that are allowed. But my point is, if your code allows it, then why shouldn't SB 9s? They're kind of simple subdivisions because there are only 2 parcels, and that's why you have that provision in the code. So making me do a map and everybody else do a map is just a waste of funds. Now, what's interesting is you have dropped the fees for ADUs, the building permit fees, and then another arm of the town comes along and says, oh, well, you got to do a map for $5,000 or $10,000. And it's really redundant. You know, one or the other, but you don't need both. Anyway, that's my position. Thank you for your time. I appreciate hearing you. You know, I wish there would have been, this is a simple problem, but there's no mechanism to kind of work it out administratively. And I've talked to the department, I've got an audience, but nobody's been listening, you know, to the facts. Anyway, thank you very much, Council.
Thank you very much. All right, we will move to questions from Council next. Vice Mayor Pallavi, we'll start with you. Any questions?
No.
All right. Councilmember Zabriskie.
Yeah, these are questions for Lucas. Mr. Ferwerder emphasized that it was stated permits not required for pavement. I believe you addressed this in your staff report, but could you just briefly address it now?
Yeah, absolutely. He's correct. There are certain exemptions for flat work that would not require a permit, but because he was connecting to the right-of-way, that would require an encroachment permit, along with some excavation that happened to the hillside behind the parking pad.
Okay. And then he also said, this is not a driveway, but a parking pad, but I don't see that being a distinction for you. You describe it as a parking pad.
Yeah, it is a parking pad. It's more the encroachment issue than how we're defining what it actually does.
Okay. And then he said Donner Avenue is a private road. Is there any dispute on that, or does it have any relevance to you?
I may defer to engineering on that one.
There's no dispute on that. The town does not maintain that road. We do regularly enforce the development code standards on both private roads and public streets.
Okay. And then Mr. Ferreter emphasized that the road is only has only 12 feet of pavement. Is that? Do you agree with that factual characterization?
It is a very narrow road. The subdivision is quite old, and so it doesn't have a standard width right-of-way, which does make narrow roads in that subdivision.
Okay. Mr. Fairweather, could you come up to the...
The mic's still on? Yeah.
Yes. Since you were last here in front of the council, you did meet with the town staff to discuss this some more?
Yes, I did, yes.
Okay.
No, I had an audience with the town attorney and Jan.
Okay. I wanted to make sure I hit all your factual points that you presented to us this evening. Not the legal, you also talked about the law, but I just want to make sure that I've captured all the things you've characterized as what sounds to me like a factual dispute with the staff. The point about driveway versus parking pad, the width of the street, Donner Avenue being a private road, and then whether a permit is required for pavement.
Yeah, I think there was a misstatement that Lucas used the word encroachment. You can't have an encroachment if the city doesn't own the street. Okay? It's a private street. It's got an APN.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Those are all my questions.
Thank you. Councilmember Klofstad?
Well, thank you, Councilmember Zabriskie. You drilled down on all of mine as well. I think the only other thing that I would like engineering to speak on, it does make sense to me that we would continue to apply the development code standards on even private roads, because it could be that at some point we adopt those and we would want those same standards adhered to. Are there any other reasons why to or why not to apply those same codes?
I think the other reasons would be the intent. So in this case, our development code and our engineering standards are designed to cause parking for private properties to be on the private property and not on the road edge, where it can be a challenge, particularly for snow removal. So while that's not an issue for the town and its operation, because we're not plowing the snow out there, it doesn't mean that it wouldn't be an issue for the residents of the subdivision and their contractors, that that same physical challenge of accomplishing snow removal on tight streets when you've got cars parked right on the edge of the road exists in either condition.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Ferrata, yes, I do have a question for you as well. Please use the mic.
And we'll actually, you'll get 5 minutes for rebuttal after public comment, so you can hold that thought, and then we'll go to Councilmember Klofstad's question.
So my question to you is, in the mapping, it seems like these documents are required for the final condition. Why wouldn't you want to do those?
A map is not necessary. You have
Isn't it necessary for the finalization of the SBA 9 lot split?
No, just do a certificate of compliance.
Thank you very much. Staff, can you comment on that?
I could offer a comment. Generally, when property is being subdivided, which is what would be accomplished here, it is extremely good practice to have property corners set and maps recorded that clearly document for anyone involved, whether that be regulatory agencies, future buyers of the property, et cetera, to know where the property corners are.
Also, potentially for utilities to create easements as necessary.
Yeah, so the recordation of a map and the placement of property corners is kind of standard practice when subdividing property.
It's literally the foundation of the property.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. That's all.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilmember Zabriskie, for asking all your questions. Those were the same I noted. I appreciate that. So I have no further questions. So now we'll move to public comment on this item, if anyone has a public comment. Seeing none, we will close public comment, and then now I believe it is an opportunity for you to provide a 5-minute rebuttal.
The comments made about snow removal are conceptual, yes. Snow removal isn't going to be an issue here. In fact, I do the snow removal, or I contract to have the snow removal done. We have a history of a contractor doing it, and the parking cars alongside the road will not be a problem. There's enough places for him to place the snow, because you still have a 25-foot right-of-way and only 12 feet of pavement, so you have the other half. In fact, that's the same equation that happens on city streets. I think your standard right-of-way is, 60 feet, and your pavement is, 25 feet? So you have a storage zone. And just the uniqueness of this property, there's land on either side of me to store snow. So, and the other thing about storing snow I have to point out is snow removal has changed in my lifetime. We used to plow it and stack it. Now with the blowers, and they're commonly used by our contractor, getting rid of the snow is not a problem, because they just shoot it in a certain direction rather than just creating a berm on the side of the road. The second point is the comment about the map and the property corners. Property corners are set as based on the original map. So you don't need a map to set property corners. You just got to say you need it 50 feet up the line. So, and I would say I'm a licensed surveyor, and I've been licensed to practice surveying for 50 years. You don't need a map under this circumstance where it's a simple split. Now, there's a few cases if the parcels are irregular or there hasn't been corners established previously, then there might be a need for map. But what I'm saying is, it's in your development code that you don't have to have a map. You ask for an exemption. And I'm just saying it's a waste of money for not only me, but everybody that comes behind me. That map doesn't do any good if you have a deed description, and I've provided that already. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, now we will move it back to council for deliberation. Lucas, do you have a slide with staff recommendations?
I do, yeah.
You wouldn't mind pulling that up to help us discuss. Thank you. Vice Mayor Pallavi.
Sure. Thanks, Mayor. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate all the time spent, staff, appellant, et cetera. Did a site visit before our last council meeting just to sort of see for myself, even when there was still a bunch of snow over there, and got to check it out. I would unfortunately say our purview is extremely limited, when we hear appeals like this. So just for your information, we can't go back and change any conditions. We basically are saying yes or no to what's already happened. With that said, I like your idea. It should have been a condition of approval when you had your planning commission hearing, to coincide building permit, pavement removal, et cetera. That would have been potentially something that could have happened at the planning commission level, but it unfortunately can't happen here. So based on my findings, based on the information that's been presented in the appeal, I would be inclined to deny the appeal this evening. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Zabriskie.
Right. I can appreciate Mr. Friberder's frustration because he's in the business of what we're talking about. However, I'm not seeing any error in the Planning Commission's determination, and I'm not seeing the requirement that he record a map in this case as being a requirement that all future people that come before us on this issue have to file a map or be entitled to a waiver. I see the waiver as a case-by-case determination. So I'm inclined, subject to what the other council members have to say, to adopt staff's recommendation.
Thank you. Councilmember Klofstad?
I concur. I, again, am appreciative of your time spent here and helping us understand the nuances of this issue. It is a very unique circumstance with a private road, but I am also in agreement. I think the Community Development Director and Planning Commission's determination should be upheld.
Thank you very much. I will concur with my fellow council members. Thank you for, the time and effort you've put into this, and thank you to staff as well. I know that there's been a lot, but again, I would concur with what has already been said. So with that, I would ask if anyone would like to make a motion.
I'll go ahead and move that we uphold CDD and the Planning Commission's determination and deny the appeal, and then approve the requested urban lot split with all of the original conditions of approval.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? None? That passes unanimously. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So I am going to check in with my fellow council members. Typically, we take a break around 7. We did have a late dinner, and I have heard it has arrived. Are we good continuing on till another item or two? Okay. We'll continue on. I know Alfred's excited to present, so.
Yeah, no, I was just looking, I assume these are people who are here because they have something to say, and I don't know.
I'm guessing they might, yeah. Yeah, I'm guessing it's the item after this one, but maybe they're excited about microtransit too.
We'll find out.
All right, with that, we will move on to item number 7.2, the continuation of the microtransit pilot program, potentially through June 30th, 2024.
Thank you. Good evening, Your Honor. Members of Town Council, Alfred Knotts, Transportation Program Manager. We are here tonight to discuss the continuation of a microtransit program. We were before you on January 24th as a workshop item, no direction. Tonight we're here for some direction to discuss the continuation of a program. It was also discussed at our council priority setting as well. So this will be an ongoing discussion, depending on what happens this evening, about how we proceed. But we do want to give you a little more time to discuss and how we proceed forward and leading into our budgeting process also. So I won't go into a ton of background. Obviously, we heard about traffic tonight, and we are building. We have a great system and a great network of bike trails, pedestrian facilities, obviously highway facilities. And again, looking at our overall system, transit plays a key component into that network and that system and building that. Microtransit has been an endeavor we've taken on over the last couple of months, as you're well aware of. Just to refresh everybody's memory about the summer pilot program, these are kind of the parameters and the characteristics of it. I won't belabor this again, but there are key performance indicators in there that when we continue to look at how the system is performing versus our existing transit system or other aspects of it in terms of our fixed route service and our demand response service, it does tell us a lot of information about where we put our investment in transit. So that's kind of what we're continuing to reevaluate. Again, we don't necessarily have a shoulder season. That's kind of what we're here to talk about tonight. But we do have a peak summer. We do have a peak winter. And we've seen a lot of data come back on that. And and just how it's responded just based on those different variables. A lot of that has been affected by, in the winter pilot, we'll talk about that in a second, but just wait times and average times, and that's something for council to kind of keep in the back of their mind, vehicles, costs, and striking that balance. So again, we had some key performance indicators here, the shared rides, average wait times. Again, the ridership was very, very productive or very encouraging in terms of that service. The winter pilot, we added some data on here. Last month, we only had about data till the end of December. Now we have data until the end of January. Again, we've scaled back a little bit of the vehicles based on cost, but also the average wait times were very, very low in the summer. So we're trying to, again, strike that balance. We did add a little bit of the service area, nothing really out in the huge hinterlands, if you will, but just a little expansion of services to pull in some generators and some activity centers related to West River, the middle school, and some affordable and low-income housing units as well. We are averaging about 329 passengers per day. It's about 7 passengers per vehicle hour. It is on par with our fixed route system has also gone up considerably. We talked about that a little bit last time, so that's something to play into our consideration in terms of the long-term vision. Our daily ridership versus the summer versus the winter is up about 23%. We work with Gordon and LSC, and they've worked on a lot of different microtransit programs. I think over the next, what they've seen over year to year is that increase as people become very familiar with it. It becomes more of a part of our community, and that's what we want with transit. We want it to be part of our community. We want it to be an amenity. We want it to be something that that serves our community on a daily basis. So hopefully we continue to see those numbers grow. One number we have seen continue to see grow also is 58% of our shared rides. We were at about 27%. This goes into that discussion we had last time also about VMT and obviously trying to achieve a lot of those goals, but really increasing that vehicle occupancy is a goal as well. The average wait times have gone up. They're about 39 minutes. So that's something I know that we all kind of talked about or have heard in the community, and something we are keeping an eye on, and where is that kind of sweet spot or that elasticity. Obviously we can not throw more money, but we can allocate more money or invest more money to bring those down. And there's definitely a trade-off there as well. Again, VMT may go up during those times, so there's things that we're still continuing to try to strike a balance on. So what we wanted to discuss tonight, again, last time we spoke, we were workshopping, talking big picture and kind of looking at our services and how the microtransit compares and the role it plays. Tonight we want to talk about the continuation of a spring pilot. That would look to continue the service right now. It does end on April 2nd, so honestly that should say April 3rd. Would continue to June 30th, and that would look at expanding to town-wide. Again, trying to achieve that level of service, about 20 to 30 minutes. And speaking with the contractor and looking at the operating environment, both in terms of weather and climate, and just visitation, we still think we can probably use that 5 to 6 vehicle allocation to still achieve those. But that's something we will work through, and part of the recommendation today or something to consider is how we come back and what we present probably in March also. So that will take into consideration and have to drill down on those numbers a little bit more. Continue to strive to achieve that 40 to 50% ride share, looking at about 5 to 6 vehicles, as I mentioned. We talked about this last month in terms of financial resources or costs based on the vehicle service hours and costs that we've seen from our pilots that currently operate and our previous pilot. It would be about $460,000 to continue through the spring period. Again, what we're trying to look at here is balancing that cost versus level of service, and the responsiveness and making sure. The thing is, we've seen even with those wait times, and we still haven't gotten any surveys back, and we're still collecting those surveys after the first month, but ridership has not dropped off. Even with those wait times. We have seen cancellations and those things kind of go up a little bit, but we haven't seen the ridership necessarily drop off with those average riderships of about 320 passengers per day. So just by a little bit by comparison here, what we would look at during that shoulder season and something that we haven't embarked on as we continue to tweak these dials of what the pilot characteristics are, is that we would look to expand this now into a town-wide service versus what we've been kind of operating. I used the last winter snapshot here because that was the biggest geography that we've served, even though it's just slightly bigger than the summer. But we would look to include all of the Prosser View area, the Sierra Meadows area, everything essentially. And then that would be part of our next little endeavor in terms of pilot considerations. And that will play into a funding model that we come back with also and what that looks like as well. So a year-round service, so leading into that, and not to mix apples and oranges here or convolute the discussion, but again, we're focusing kind of on the 4 items you'll see in terms of the recommendation at the end, but also leading into the budgeting process I mentioned as well, and coming back to council and kind of a 2 or 3 step process about what does an annual year-long program look like. And this was the one that was highlighted last time in terms of kind of the full bore, the full level of service and the full geography also, just to give the ranges of magnitude in terms of cost. And what we would look to see in annual ridership. I mean, these are numbers based on our actuals that we are seeing and numbers that, our short-range transit plan has looked at and forecast for, since its inception or adoption 5 years ago that we, honestly, I don't know that we ever thought we would really see realized in terms of ridership. So these are based on our what we're actually seeing in terms of what we could expect to see in terms of meeting that demand. So. Other operational considerations that are discussed in the staff report also are, and I don't have all these answers today, but things that we would iron out the details on is to incorporate that ADA service into the TAR Connect. Again, we're looking at our clients we have right now, which are about 140. Some of those have been kind of carried over for future years because their eligibility does not, unless they request short-term eligibility that continues on. So we would do a kind of an effort to kind of recalibrate and see if that number is still about that 140 in terms of ADA clients. Even using that number, we feel like we could still roll that into this service, and the app provides for that flexibility also. Eliminate the dial-a-ride service as it currently exists, since it's essentially a redundancy in that service. We don't need vehicles driving behind 2 different contractors picking up different people. Dial-a-ride also operates right now on a 24-hour reservation. That would eliminate that. So we're really increasing that level of service on people's reliability and predictability also. And something we would consider of potentially some of those cost savings, and again, I don't have all the answers right now in terms of kind of what those dollar figures look like. We have a pretty good idea, or we wouldn't even be discussing this, but would increase the potential of taking those dial-a-ride dollars. Right now we're providing, again, that kind of redundancy, at least in those areas that now overlap. Taking that dial-a-ride service funding that could become freed up or eligible, and increase Truckee local service, reduce the headways down to half an hour, so increasing that service along the Truckee local spine. So that would be another, again, a huge step in terms of what we've talked about in our short-range transit plan, which is even identified in our general plan, current and proposed, in terms of goals and to implement some of those goals. So that would be something we would consider as part of this process. And I think that I should say questions and discussion, but
thank you very much.
This back over to you, Your Honor.
So if I can just jump in quickly, I want to just point out a couple of things that the staff was taking into consideration in bringing this forward. So one, we heard from the council pretty loudly during our study session, and as well as at the priority setting session, that you were interested in trying this year-long expanded town-wide service. So when staff came back and in the conversations, we were concerned about shutting down the winter pilot program in April, starting back up in July. It's confusing for the community, but also out of respect for the employees of our contractor and providing them with stable and consistent employment. And then as we think about our current fixed route and dial-a-ride, we are in contract with our contractor for those services. So part of eliminating the dial-a-ride program is to be sensitive to the contract that we have with that service provider and wanting to keep them whole, because we don't know what's going to happen at the end of the pilot project. Are we going to have a sustainable funding source to continue with a microtransit program or not? Are we going to need to bring back dial-a-ride in some form? So we want to be sensitive to that relationship. And so the concept of shifting that funding into the fixed route, if we can, with all the restrictions tied to that funding, is where we came up with these reduced headways from an hour to 30 minutes. So just to be clear, there's some of that conversation is happening, and that's why you see some of these recommendations, as we are concerned about maintaining the relationships and the staffing and making sure that the employees have consistent work that's been promised to them.
Thank you, Jen. We will move to questions. Councilmember Zabriskie, we will start with you.
Alfred, do you know what percentage of the dial-a-ride passengers currently are ADA certified?
We do not. I can pull some of that information. What we have seen, and something I didn't touch on in just looking at the last couple of months, is in the summer period, we didn't see a big drop in dial-a-ride. We saw the increase can happen in our Target Connect, and our dial-a-ride kind of continue to stay about average. What we've seen since the start of the winter pilot is that dial-a-ride ridership has gone down about 15 to 20%. So I think we have seen a lot of shift over to the Target Connect, and that would still allow additional capacity strictly for those ADA passengers that way also. So, but what I could do is pull the rides per day that are on the dial-a-ride, which are ADA clients versus just the general public. And we know that based on the fact of who pays the fare, and the ADA clients are free also, and who does the booking.
Okay, this also partly leads into my next question. I want to take the example of the person who has a medical appointment scheduled. They don't own a car. They need a ride to the medical appointment, and then we have the person who's going shopping by coincidence at the same time. The shopper calls ahead of the medical appointment person. We don't have the kind of sophistication or ability to favor one person over the other. Essentially, it's first come, first serve. Is that
correct? In that case, those would still be general public rides at that point, just regardless of what their trip purpose was at that point.
Okay. I think the town manager was trying to explain why we aren't just advancing the pilot to an April to April period. Can you explain that to me again? And Alfred could do it if you'd like.
We could do that. Our thought was that if we advanced it at least through June of 2024, that would give us the opportunity, a better opportunity to understand the likelihood of an ongoing funding stream to continue microtransit even beyond 2024.
And you don't feel we'd be able to do that with April to April? April's just too soon to make sure we have it designed correctly?
So there's two things. One is operating the pilot, getting more information on how to fine-tune the operation. And then a second thing is getting some degree of understanding of the electorate's interest or lack thereof to continue funding for microtransit and other transportation initiatives. So I think if we just went through next April, we would get a full year's worth of operational data that we could analyze. And what we may or may not have at that point is understanding as to the likelihood of a funding stream that would allow the microtransit to continue. Versus, I think if the program went through the end of next fiscal year, we would have a higher likelihood, or maybe even certainty one way or the other, of a funding stream for the program to continue.
And then I was the one who asked the question whether there would be flexibility to reduce the size or modify the program, realizing that could mess up the reliability of the data we're trying to gather. And my understanding is essentially labor contracts and embedded costs of the vehicles are already locked in, and the only place where we'd have flexibility is on fuel. Is that fair?
There's two different types of charges at these types of contracts. It's the fixed and then it's the variable rate. So the fixed is essentially everything that's kind of the overhead and the leases and all that's locked that you mentioned. Say it became late October and 3 vehicles are being able to meet our demand at that point. There is that flexibility on being kind of an adaptive management strategy to say, hey, we don't need 5 vehicles today. So there is that flexibility to scale down more than, hey, I need another vehicle, which could trigger a full contract amendment because you're adding a vehicle and you're adding all these additional costs. So there is the ability to kind of scale down based on that demand. And we're not just running vehicles and picking people up in 3-minute wait times just because the contract says so. So there is the ability to scale down.
Well, on the contract with it's with Mountaineer, correct?
It's with Downtowner.
Or, excuse me.
Yeah,
Downtowner.
they're the same operator. They're the contractor.
And essentially, the town is committing to a certain compensation for drivers through that year, correct or not?
We would be entering into an agreement where we would identify the dollar amount that we would be paying the contractor for the service on a vehicle hour. So we wouldn't necessarily be doing a lump sum saying provide microtransit for $2.5 million for next year. We would be saying, based on our current information, we want 6 vans running in the shoulder seasons and 9 or 10 vans running in the peak seasons. And later in the evening, we can scale those vans back by 25% because ridership's lower. We would be making those kinds of estimates in terms of how many vehicles we needed by time of day, by season. Ask the contractor to give us basically a cost per hour per vehicle that we would then pay them. Okay. So I think at the end of the day, there is flexibility in the contract to scale up or scale down. When the question was asked in the question that you posed, I think I drafted the response. What I was trying to articulate is the higher the degree of confidence we can give the contractor as to how long. Yeah, we want to go through April, or we want to go through the end of June, or we want to go through the beginning of next December, because that would actually give us not a full year townwide, but a full year snapshot. That's going to make the contractor's ability to set up the operation in as efficient a manner as possible. It's going to give them the best ability to do that and to give us the best hourly rate, as compared to if we're saying, well, we're going to run this for some amount of time, we're not exactly sure when it's going to end. That's a different conversation with the contractor.
Right. Okay, thank you. Those are all my questions.
Thank you. Councilmember Klofstad?
I only have one question, Alfred. In our study session, we did talk about looking at, based on this, the information that we gather from these pilots, looking at potentially purchasing our own vehicles. I didn't see that in the summary, but I just want to confirm that's still something that is being considered, so that we would have control over the types of vehicle and particularly the types of fuel source.
Yes, and that was a different action item last month when we submitted some of the grants that we submitted, which would be not dependent on us contracting out or operating it ourselves. So that would still give us that flexibility. And that's a path we're still going down to give us the maximum flexibility and the ability to kind of control our own operation.
Excellent, thank you. And then from the vehicles that I've seen and ridden in, are they? I'm not an expert in this now, I'm realizing. Are any of them diesel, or are they all regular gas?
They're all regular gasoline.
Okay, so we don't have an opportunity to try to offer our renewable diesel as an option.
We do not, as of now. The contracts now that we've been doing are kind of have been these pilots as we look for a year-long. Their lease ability changes to do year-long rather than these short-term leases. So there could be the opportunity of looking at the vehicle type a little bit harder with a longer-term contract.
Let's at least keep that opportunity in mind and look at all ways to possibly reduce our greenhouse gas emissions then. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Vice Mayor Pallavi.
Yeah, just two quick ones that I think have mostly been answered. But just to be clear, the anticipation is we're going to extend this and then we're going to run it for another year past the extension date. So we're going to try to go full fiscal year. That's our anticipation, obviously, pending budget discussions. And that we would maintain the level of service that we're looking at throughout the course of the coming year, right? In terms of serving the whole town and the metrics that I took a picture of, basically the 20 to 30 minute wait times, that's kind of going to be the target, even for the July 1 to June 30 time period as well.
Yes.
Yes, I'm seeing three head nods. And then I just have a quick follow-up to what Councilmember Zabriskie asked and what you were referring to, Dan, just of the way that the contracting works. My question was going to be what's sort of that adaptive strategy for, increasing vehicles, either on a day-to-day basis or decreasing wait times as we've started to see. So is it not really, it's not really an adaptive management strategy from a perspective that I'm thinking like, oh man, all of a sudden June 12th, whatever day of the week that was, we're starting to, in June 13th, we started to see increased ridership. Okay, on the 14th, let's put another vehicle out. Can you just go through that a little bit more with us? Or is it more the recipe that you sort of described, which is like, hey, this is what we're shooting for, and that's how the contract is built?
What we're envisioning is that we would we would take our best estimate at the number of vehicles needed, again, by time of day and by season, with the intent of meeting that 20 to 30 minute wait time goal. Okay. And that we would do real-time monitoring of how well we're meeting or exceeding that goal or not meeting that goal in either direction. If we're seeing 10-minute wait times, maybe we take a few vehicles out of service to save those dollars. If we're seeing excessive wait times, maybe we add vehicles in. I don't think it'll be a day-to-day type adjustment. It may be more month to month, just because there's logistics involved for the contractor in terms of securing vehicles and securing employees in the ability to scale up and scale down rapidly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Oh, I turned my mic off. Sorry. That was all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Two quick questions. So on here, we are saying we would extend the current contract through June 30th. So are we guessing we would keep the same service level of 8 a.m. till 10 p.m. and 5-6 vehicles, what we have now is what this would be for?
We would actually look to start a little bit earlier. Those are part of the negotiations we would have with the contractor right now. So the peak AM peak that we're seeing is at 8 o'clock in the morning. Like immediately, we're seeing 30 to 40 rides. So that would be something we would want to work through the details with them. And as Dan mentioned, kind of the startup and the throttle down and demobilization, remobilization will definitely play into our favor in terms of continuing the contract. So we might have some more flexibility on those hours in that end versus having to pay to kind of to restart up the program. So those are some of the flexibility we would look to leverage with other hours also.
Got it. And then if we were to eliminate Dial a Ride, there would be no pre-reservation system. You would just book your ride within the app day of when you were wanting to take a ride, correct?
So we would like to, I personally would like to work with the contractor to continue that book. There's a lot of people that are, they have very, very cyclical appointments and habits and so on, especially our special needs community that are very set in kind of their regimented ways. And I would like to work with the contractor and being able to still provide that. And there still would be obviously booking through phone and that type of mechanism also. So I would like to provide both opportunities and work with the contractor on that.
But that would be for ADA eligible passengers would be the cutoff there.
Correct.
So if you've got the ADA certification, there's a process to acquire that, then you would be eligible effectively to make an advance reservation on Dial Ride to accommodate those trips, as compared to anyone who's ridden on Dial Ride this year gets priority status in terms of TARC Connect. That's not what we're anticipating, just the 88 passengers.
And with some of these changes that we're looking at, not as part of the continuation of the pilot, if there is a roll-in of the Dial Ride into this service, that would require some outreach, a pretty robust outreach effort. That's a big change for the town that hasn't occurred. So we're making sure that we're getting out in the community and talking to people about, because right now they've just had more service, so they have more alternatives or options. So now if we're tweaking things, we want to make sure that we don't kind of upset the apple cart, so to speak.
Thank you.
Yes.
All right, that's all the questions. So we will move to a public comment. If any member of the public would like to make a comment, come on up, state your name. And again, each member of the public will have 3 minutes. And make sure you hit the microphone that the red light's on.
Hello? Okay. Hi, I'm Cassie Habel. I'm the director of the Truckee Downtown Merchants Association. Well, thank you, Council, for participating in this, and town staff for all the work that you've done with TARC Connect. And I would just like to give perspective of the time, 6 a.m. or whatever time or earlier time. It would be greatly appreciated, and even maybe a later time for our workers that get off at 10 or 11, and so that they have a safe ride home. Anecdotally, I am hearing a lot from employees, from downtown businesses, and from students throughout the whole community that are using TARC Connect, and that they very much appreciate it. I also own the cooking gallery, and we have one employee that uses it on a regular basis. And the wait time, while it can be inconvenient, she is learning how to maneuver through that, where you get a cancellation, then you re-up again momentarily so that you can get back in. So that's something to look at, how people are canceling, then they're re-entering their name into the batch, right? But honestly, this is just a great opportunity. It has been for our community, and I'm just really happy that it's successful. So thank you, Council, and thank you, staff.
Thank you, Cassie. Any other public comments on this item? Seeing none, we will close a public comment and bring it back up here for discussion. Councilmember Zabriskie.
Well, on the one hand, I don't see how we're going to solve our traffic problem without more active transportation and public transportation. Even if we get the ski resorts to shoulder their responsibilities, I don't see how we control traffic unless we blow up the mountains and fill in the river. We need more public transportation, and this is going to help us move in that direction. All that said, I'd like to hear from my other council members on their thoughts on the duration, whether we go from April until June 2024, or whether you'd like to see a shorter time period. I'm kind of on the fence on that.
Thank you.
I am on the fence on that.
All right, we will head down this way. Councilmember Klifstad.
I am fully supportive of this. I think this is absolutely brilliant and what I've wanted to see. Never thought it would be possible this soon. So thank you, staff, for all you've done to get us to this point. I know we still have some significant challenges in finding a sustainable funding source for this, but I'm very committed to that process, and hopefully our community will step up and show their support as well. I think that this time frame makes perfect sense, aligning it with the fiscal year. Otherwise, we end up with a gap at the end of that year of 2024 that we potentially haven't planned for. So to me, this makes sense. This $450,000 for the short duration to get us to the end of this fiscal year, absolutely yes. And then do a full calendar year contract also makes sense to me. And the expansion of the service to the whole community is absolutely what we need to be doing. There's so many people that have enjoyed this service in our community and so many that haven't been able to, and I would like to bring that equity to the table. And then obviously the only other wish I have is to try to reduce the carbon footprint of these vehicles, which I know is a long-term goal of ours as well. And it's not part of this, it's another task item, so I look forward to that discussion.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Pallavi.
Yeah, excuse me. Really impressive work coming back to us so quickly with this sort of stopgap, especially for Q4. And then I'm definitely in support of a full fiscal. I think that's ideal. That's what we were aiming for. I think the stopgap for this last quarter is really great work, and I think it's perfect. I mean, it's what we need. It's the data that we need if we're going to come back and we're going to ask this community for revenue. We got to have the data, and the more data that we can put into this project, if we're going to make it a reality, I just think the more data, the better at this point. And we shouldn't be scared to spend this up front in order to make a much more long-term fiduciary decision that is going to face us, in the next year or two if we want to keep this thing going. So we have some pretty big budget discussions, that are really going to be challenging to work through right now. So I'm in support of this right now. I think it's the right path, and I agree with everything Councilmember Klostad already stated.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Pallavi. I'll add my 2 cents as well. I'm supportive of having it go all the way through June 30th of 2024 for the reasons stated. I think the more data we can collect, the more time we can have conversations about potential revenue sources, the better. Really excited about this. Really thanks, Alfred and Dan, for all your hard work. It is so exciting that this has come to fruition and the community loves it so much, and there's potential expansion. I think every time we talk about it, we do hear from folks like, when's it going to come to Prosser? When's it going to go to Donner Lake? So now hopefully we can say real soon. Also to Cassie's point, in talking with lots of folks, workers getting to work, also connecting with the regional TART service, those that work in Kings Beach or Tahoe City, buses, the first bus that might leave, they can't get there yet. So this could help them take microtransit to the regional TART to get to their job farther away, help eliminating even more greenhouse gas emissions throughout our region. So really excited about that. The one thing I would say, you mentioned ridership has not dropped off this winter, which is great. I do wonder if it would have increased even more if wait times hadn't been so long some of the times. I know just talking with folks and personally, sometimes you go and it's way longer than you think, and maybe you cancel and you try something else and it still doesn't work. So you then don't take microtransit. So I'm glad to hear, we're looking at what's the right amount of vans to service the different times of year. And then I would say if we can do reservations for ADA, I do think that's important. I met with Alice Wong from the hospital board today, and I'll share more later in council reports, but one thing we talked about was microtransit. She's very excited about it, but wants to ensure that those folks, like you mentioned, that really need service at certain times, that they're still able to do that. And then my last comment, extending the winter pilot, through June 30th, excited that maybe we'd, expand the timing a little bit. Because I do also feel like even though June 30th is the end of the fiscal year, our peak season kind of already starts before then, so whatever we can do maybe a little earlier to kind of go to kind of the peak season service a week or two before that might be great, because that's already going to be 4th of July weekend. So very excited. Thank you all for your hard work, and I'm supportive of all these actions. So Councilmember Zabriskie, coming back to you.
I'm ready for a motion.
All right, who would like to make it? Councilmember Zabriskie?
Go ahead.
I'll move that what are we actually moving on? I don't think all these things need, we just accept your recommendations?
You can do that.
Yeah?
Yeah, you can just accept the recommendation.
Okay, sounds great. I will move that we accept the recommendations in front of us and agendized.
And I'll second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Nope. Passes unanimously. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Honor, Council.
All right, moving right along, I think we'll continue on to the next item since I do believe we have members of the public here who'd like to participate. I would say let's do this item. Just cross your legs. 7.3? 7.3. All right, moving on to 7.3. West River Street Park, C 1817 Design Contract Amendment number 6. And we'll go over to Nola.
Yeah, so for council's benefit, this is Nola's first presentation to the town council, so.
We'll be gentle.
I'm not nervous
at all.
Yeah.
Your mic on?
Sorry about that. Good evening. As Dan said, I'm Nola Mitchell. Today I will be presenting the West River Street Park. We'll discuss an overview and look at the design contract amendment. Tonight, in my presentation, we'll talk about the project background. We'll look at the current design. We'll take a look at the fiscal impacts. And finally, we'll discuss the design contract amendment. So the proposed park is on a site that the town acquired. It's the former Nevada County Maintenance Yard. The town acquired it in 2004. This site required soil remediation that was conducted, and the town received a notice of no further action in 2017. From 2010 to 2011, there were 3 public workshops where information was gathered to help create the West River Site Redevelopment Feasibility Study. That study recommended doing a combination of both a park and commercial development at this site. During that same time, the town reached out to try and get requests, any interests from commercial developers, and at the time, nothing favorable came back, so the project was put on hold. In 2016, Town Council directed staff to reinitiate this project, and that included updating the website and also more community outreach in 2017. In 2019, the contract to design the park was awarded to Milton Design Group. And then in 2020, there was another virtual public meeting. So I'd like to point out there's been a lot of input from the public, a lot of workshops to get us to the point we're at today. Finally, in 2020, the master plan, which is the 30% design plan for the park, was accepted by Town Council and approved. And I'd like to point out this cool picture of the old Nevada County, one of their warehouses or garages being demolished. This was from about 2005. The West River Street Park has several project goals. One of the goals is to provide a passive park with public river access. Another is to restore the riparian edge. There's a goal of creating a public, open, and social space with the multi-use of being both a park and a commercial offerings that are river-oriented. And then also connectivity. The park will have a future bridge that crosses the Truckee River and connects up to the Legacy Trail. This slide gives us an overview of where the actual location of the proposed park is. We can see the Truckee River along the southern part of the slide. Okay, you can't see my pointer. The green area is where the West River Street Park is proposed, and that is along West River Street. On the west side of the park is the old Trestle Distillery, and on the east side is Mill Street. This slide gives an overview of the project phases. So currently tonight we are just talking about the area in the green, the plaza in the bowl. That is the park design that we're discussing. Staff has recommended that the streetscapes that surround the park be done in a future phase to coincide with commercial development on the two properties on the east and west that say future building. This is the approved 30% park plan. In this plan, we've got the plaza that is along closer to the West River Street. It also shows here that we have parallel parking. So most of the slides are updated, but I just want to point out that the proposed design has parallel parking along West River Street. Currently, this site has a lot of fill material, and it's a somewhat level site with a really steep drop-off down to the Truckee River. So the design of the park has included a feature that makes kind of a center bowled-out area where fill will be removed, and then the ground will be graded to create access to the Truckee River. This is the current design of the park, including a plaza, a river overlook. There's a pedestrian path that connects up to the future bridge. The bridge is not part of this project, but that is the bridge that connects to the Legacy Trail. And then you have commercial development on either side of the park. These are some renderings of the views from the terrace bowl portion of the park. So we've got the river overlook. We have a view from the view looking back up of the bowl, a river view from the bowl, and the accessible access path. I'd like to kind of switch gears now to talking about the fiscal impact of this project. This is the 22-23 adopted budget for the West River Street Park. In the general fund, there's about $3 million for both design and construction of the park. Within that general fund, there's a couple other funding sources I want to point out. So within is the economic development designation money, close to $700,000, and then also the property sale. That's the potential sale to the developers on either end of the park, and that money would then be used for the park. There is almost $1 million in grants for this project. So those are 3 separate grants, the urban greening with $500,000, and then 2 Prop 68 grants. And then the developer funding money, that was put in the budget to be used for the streetscape and frontage improvements. And as I mentioned before, that'll happen, that won't be a part of this park design and construction. That'll be separate. So we've come tonight before Town Council to discuss the design contract amendment. So as of today, over $200,000 has been spent on this design contract with Milton Design Group. We've proposed a contract amendment of $124,822 in order to fully complete the park design. So that would take us from the 30% design to the 100% design. Currently, we've got about $191,000 left in the contract with Milton. So in total, we're looking at about $300,000 required to fully complete the design services. So that's the contract amendment plus the remaining budget. The updated amendment also includes additional scope. Some of these items are updating rates from 2019 to 2023, additional meetings, some more survey work, an additional plan set draft, and coordination for the bridge. We've also updated the schedule, so we are looking to get the 60% design next month. And then in November 2023, we've got scheduled the final 100% plans, specs, and cost estimate. That lines us up to start construction bidding in November 2023 and construct the park in the summer of 2024. So tonight we have 2 recommendations. First is to authorize the town manager to execute the contract amendment in the amount of $124,822 with Milton Design Group. And the second recommendation is to authorize a contingency budget of $31,633. That's 10% of the money needed to complete the park design. Thanks so much for your time, and we are here to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Great job on your first presentation. All right, we will head to council for questions. Councilmember Klofstad.
I have no additional questions. Thank you for the presentation.
Vice Mayor Pallavi.
I have a few. Sorry.
That's okay.
Thank you. Can we talk about restrooms and garbage? and where those are going to be located in this park.
Do you want me to?
I could jump in and then Nola can fill in any areas that I get wrong. So in terms of garbage, we would include trash receptacles in the park that some combination of the town and TTSD, Tahoe Truckee Sierra Disposal, would service. As it relates to restrooms, there are currently no restrooms included in the park design. We have had conversation with the prospective developer of the eastern development site about the restrooms that would serve that property being open to the park users as well.
And would they be over capacity? So basically, would we be looking at a capacity of both the park and the users of that facility, or would we be just requiring the same type of building permits as we, because there wouldn't be any special, it'd have to be contractual, right? It'd have to be done at the contract phase, because otherwise through a permitting process, we just get two bathrooms.
Right. So if the question is, would we be, as a part of the purchase and sale agreement for that property, requesting or requiring that the bathrooms be oversized from what the building code would require? That's something we haven't talked about with that developer yet. We could go either way with that. And it's probably a question of whether we create a likelihood of, people being lined up to use a restroom or overcrowding in the restroom by not oversizing the restroom. What's the relative likelihood of that occurring that might inform that decision?
Where are the closest public restrooms to this potential site?
The closest public restroom would be the depot. There are other commercial properties, they're not public restrooms. There's other commercial properties on West River Street that have restroom facilities that would,
well aware, yes.
Yeah, that would likely be.
Everybody loves when people come in off the street to use their public restrooms in their private facilities, right? Yeah.
No. What I've seen is it sometimes depends on the type of business. Office businesses don't like it.
We don't need to argue about that.
Right.
What about? So let's talk a little bit more about the private contracts, because one of my biggest concerns is with both phasing, execution, restrooms, right? If we're waiting on a private entity to build a building, they have their own process to go through. So do we have any expectation at this point of, and I should also be really clear, I apologize. I'm asking a lot of my questions I know my counsel knows this because I've just asked a lot of questions about this project for a number of different years. For the public's sake, this is sort of our chance to either continue this project on the exact train that it's on, or to potentially make some changes to the direction that we're going in. So some of my questions are not necessarily pertaining to the $124,000 contract authorization in front of us. They do tend to lead us a little bit further down the road to make sure that we're making the right investments now so that we have the right information and data later, similar to what we just did. So I just caveat that, as you all probably well knew. So with the private development purchase and sale agreements, can you speak a little bit more? Are we talking at this point about any sort of timing or performance guarantees or time to construction and items like that within those negotiations? And if not, do we plan to?
Yeah, so great question. What we have done is put together draft bullet point deal points that we have provided to both of the private development interests. Those bullet point deal points do include upfront deposits that could be forfeitable if certain milestones are not met. Big picture, what we were suggesting is I believe a 5 to 6 year time period to get from property purchase, execution of the purchase and sale agreement to building occupancy, with intermediate milestones to make sure that progress is continuing. So basically execute a purchase and sale agreement, 2 to 3 years to get through a land use entitlement process, another couple of years to pull building permits, another couple of years to construct, with the notion there being that we want to see not just put in a 6 years to getting a building open, but see progress in that direction at intermediate milestones to that ultimate completion date.
Is staff looking for more specific direction from council on those timelines or on any of those bullet points?
We're more than happy to receive that so that we can incorporate that. What we were in, the current process we were in expecting with the negotiation was staff would propose deal points to the development team. We would get counter proposals to that. We would have conversations with council about what those, maybe where there's areas of different opinions. So to the extent that council has definite opinions on timelines, deposits, those kinds of things that we can incorporate early in the process, that's always a good thing.
Great. And what is the timing you're looking at on those purchase and sale agreements, and would they be concurrent for both properties? Are we looking to do both properties at the same time with the same types of contracts, et cetera, or are we on different paths with the different private interests?
We would, so we've been on the town side trying to stay on the same timeline, recognizing that at some point those paths are going to diverge. It's two separate property owners, it's two independent negotiations. And some of that will depend on the degree of concurrence we have between the town and the property owner, and property owner A versus property owner B on the deal points. So I think to the extent that we can put those agreements in place near the same time, that's a good thing. But if the timelines need to diverge because of legitimate business reasons or negotiation reasons, that may occur.
And is there a timeline, is there an expected timeline currently internally? Are we trying to get this done calendar year 2023? Do we have any expectations on sort of what our next steps are? And I guess that would also lead into, so what are our timelines on trying to get a purchase and sale agreement done? And also, can we refresh everybody's memory? I don't believe we did an RFP at all when we first even started entertaining the two private interests. This was just sort of like, how did we even get to where we are today with the two private interests?
We did do an RFP.
Got it. This has been going on for 6 years? Because we've been hearing it for 5, and that RFP must have taken place before our 5 years.
It was in 2017.
Okay, great. So purchase and sale agreement timing.
Yeah, so we've provided draft deal points to each of the prospective buyers. We've received requested amendments to that from one of the buyers. We're waiting on that from the second prospective buyer. Our hope would be to put purchase and sale agreements in place within the next 6 months, so that we will then have a degree of certainty or not on the degree of interest by each of the prospective buyers with deposits being in place. It's not just, we commit and there's not really any money behind it, but there's some deposit money that's put in place up front at the time the purchase and sale agreement is executed.
On my walk this morning, I had this concept of it'd be really cool for our budget process if we could put one of those sort of like heat map type of maps together for where our public investment has gone over the past 10 years. Because that led me to the question that I came up with, which is Nikki even here? Is Nikki? Oh, sorry. Hi, Nikki. Was how much have we basically invested at this point that for the costs that include Truckee Springs, overage on the bridge, right? So basically the unanticipated costs that we had in 2017, let's go back that far since that's when this thing started, and what costs have changed since 2017 that we have invested in between Truckee Springs, the bridge, the West River Street inflation, sort of that entire zone, how much what's the delta between what we were envisioning and what we were planning on spending in 2017 to where we are today in 2023?
I'll do my best to answer that. So in 2017, the purchase of Truckee Springs to become public open space was not on the table at that time. So the $500,000 that the town put towards that, what I believe was a $6 million purchase, that was something new that wasn't on the radar in 2017 that has been expended out there. As it relates to the trail, the bridge from the area right next to this property to the south side of the river was in our trails plan at that point in time. The timing of construction, it was identified as a medium priority as opposed to a high priority. So the construction of that bridge wasn't envisioned in 2017, to happen. It wasn't in our budget at that time. What got the construction of the bridge advanced was the land trust's commitment to fund 3/4 of the cost of it. So when the town saw an opportunity to get the bridge constructed at 25 cents on the dollar, that's what adjusted that prioritization. There were a couple of other projects that West River Street.
Well, Trailhead, right? So was that always going to be a trailhead on the south side of the river?
No. So the trailhead at the end of South River Street, in 2017, it was anticipated that was going to be private development. There was going to be some private development out on the property as part of what was anticipated, I think, at least in staff's mind, was that private development on that property would require construction of trails and potentially dedication of land to accommodate trailhead parking. But that idea hadn't fully matured because the development proposals at the time were somewhat haphazard, and there was a lot of...
What are we on the hook? What is the town's contribution to the trailhead on West River Street?
So that's $0.
Zero.
Yeah. So the land trust is funding
100%.
the trailhead.
The land trust funding the trailhead. And our overage on the bridge is currently sitting at 3-ish?
Well, our total commitment to the bridge, we believe, is going to end up being around $1.25 million, $1.25 total, right? With the land trust being closer to that 3.75 number. So, and then the West River Street streetscape project, that project, again, wasn't in the budget in 2017. It was part of the downtown specific plan. So the town in 2017 was working on the Brickletown streetscape project. I would say the basic sentiment, at least that town staff believed we were hearing from the council at the time, was an interest in continuing the downtown sidewalk and streetscape development without, at that time, a clear understanding whether West River Street should be the next project, whether Church Street should be the next project, or whether Jaboom Street should be the next project. So I think what happened is, as time went on, West River Street was identified as being the next most important section of downtown to get sidewalks, and then that was prioritized since 2017 as well.
And then the parking lots, or the easements, I should say. Easements all along the railroad tracks.
Yep. So
how much did we spend on that?
So the town spent $2.2 million in purchasing land easements from Union Pacific Railroad about 2 years ago. One of those land easements was on land that the town was previously renting from the Truckee Diner. It was a sublease. And when we did the math, purchasing the easement made a lot more sense in our long-term financial planning than continuing to pay rent. And then what we also did was purchase what I would refer to as slivers along the edge of West River Street that provided the space to build the sidewalk project, and then land in the vicinity of the bulk plant, the bulk fuel plant, and behind dependable tow that could be used for future, in all likelihood, parking development to support West River Street.
And then my last question goes back to, I think, Nola, your second or third slide with the project goals. And because we obviously haven't had a chance to, there hasn't really been any public meetings, there hasn't been any future visioning, since those goals, I think, were created, which was probably back in 2016-ish. Is there any understanding from staff's perspective that any of those project goals have changed or morphed or, anything like that? Or are we still on target?
So from, I guess, my perspective, we haven't seen any, affirmative direction from the council to say, no, this goal is no longer important, this other goal is more important. So from staff's perspective, we believe these represent the goals of the council still.
Great. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Zabriskie.
Yes, I'd like to go to the last paragraph of the staff report. And there's staff points out that if we were to delay the project or substantially modify it, there's a potential that the grant funds secured to date would be lost. Can you elaborate on that?
I can touch on it generally, and I think NOLA has the specifics. The grant funding has certain eligible uses and certain timeframes that it needs to be expended within. So if, for instance, one of the eligible uses of the grant were not implemented by the park project, so there's one of them is an urban greening grant, which requires a certain amount of vegetation to be planted. So if we didn't plant the necessary amount of vegetation, then we would not get the grant funds. That's more kind of a performance-based requirement. And then there's certain timelines that the grant funds need to be expended within, and if we miss those timelines, then the funds could go to some other project in some other part of the state.
Can you estimate the amount you were thinking of when you made this comment about the grants?
Yeah, so the urban greening grant is for $500,000, and that contract ends March 1st, 2025. So with the proposed schedule, construction in 2024, we'd be right on schedule to use that. The other two grants are the Prop 68 per capita. That's $237,592, and that one has more time. That ends June 30th, 2028. And then the final grant is the Prop 68 Recreational Infrastructure Revenue Enhancement, and that is $250,000, and that's the same as the per capita. That ends June 30th, 2028.
Okay. And then also said may lose developer interest. Is there anything specific about that, or just what's generally happens?
It as time goes on, folks with investment plans, maybe those plans change. So the further things drag on, the higher the likelihood that things could change, or interests could change, or money could be spent elsewhere on other priorities, on the private side.
Okay. I saw that we received 3 written comments. One of those written comments was from the former town manager, Tony Lashbrook. He, on the second page of his comment, he said the town's current planning and zoning doesn't allow for housing except for live work in conjunction with commercial development. Do you know offhand, is that correct?
Is Danielle here?
Did we get an actual public comment from Tony Lashbrook? Because if we did, I'd never actually got that.
No, we got an email directed just to one council member.
Oh. Thank you for clarifying.
Oh. Okay. Yes.
Danielle's going to look at the zoning.
Do you want to ask another question while Danielle looks?
Yes. He said, due to the configuration of the site, it would yield very few housing units. Is that, can you comment on that? Is that a fair characterization?
Yeah, it's kind of a relative term in terms of what what does one consider very few versus very many?
I mean, it's not a huge piece of property.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. I think we all received a comment letter from former Mayor Jones. Okay. And she's one of the developers?
Yes, she's one of the parties we're negotiating in with for a potential sale of property.
Okay, and then we all received one from the Truckee River Legacy Foundation.
Oh, I don't think I saw
Jan
that one.
Holland.
What's that? Oh, okay, I missed that one.
And I didn't know if you had any comments on his submission. That probably not.
I don't, because I didn't look. I didn't see it, but I'm not sure.
Okay, those are all the questions I have. Thank you.
Thank you. 2 questions. Is there any other grants that staff is aware of that you might be looking to cover any additional costs or for the construction, or are we expecting that will stay all in general fund?
I'm not aware that we have any other grant applications that are active right now.
We don't, but there could be, but we don't right now.
Yeah, and the closer we get to a construction date, the less viable that becomes, because oftentimes these grants have long lead times, to get through the review process and then the contracting process. Generally, it's tough, especially with state funding, for that to turn around in less than a year's time. So, which is about the timeline we would be on.
Got it. And that ties directly into my next question. The West River Street streetscape project is expected to still be under construction next summer, which would be the time in the timeline that this could start. Would there be any additional conflicts that this project could cause along the roadway, shutting down the road, or just seeing 2 projects together?
Right. If the West River streetscape project is still under construction in 2024, we would be able to manage that project and the park project concurrently without creating undue traffic impacts. The park project, fortunately, is generally not out in the roadway, and it's far enough removed that a lot of that construction activity can occur without major traffic disruption.
Got it. Thank you.
I think Mayor Romack Danielle has an answer to Councilmember Zabrisky's, although she doesn't have a mic. So it's zone DMU, which means housing is allowed.
Did you hear that, Councilmember Zabrisky? Can you repeat that?
It's currently zoned as DMU, which allows housing.
Okay, thank you.
All right. With that, we will open it up to public comment. If any members of the public want to come on up, please state your name, and again, you will have 3 minutes.
Hello. Hello again, Cassie Habel with the Truckee Downtown Merchants Association. I first want to say how wonderful it is that we actually have public restrooms in downtown Truckee at the Welcome Center, which supports lots and lots of visitors and locals alike, and is very important to our downtown. With that being said, it cannot be the only public restrooms if we are adding on to our downtown, which we are, which will be I would like to say this: to assume that the downtown businesses will open up their restrooms to visitors that are attending the park is negligible. There are 2 restrooms allowed to go to on West River, 2 restaurants, that's it. And they have the right to refuse based on who is eating in their establishments. So I think that if we're adding on a beautiful park, which very excited about, and I think it's going to be beautiful, and to assume or to think or to contract with a property, someone who's going to buy the property, develop the property, and think that that's going to be the same person in 10 years that's going to allow us to use the restrooms is also negligible. So I would like to put it out there into the ether that perhaps we need public restrooms at a park that would help support visitors and locals alike have that nice passive way to the river.
Thank you.
Hi, Council. My name is Andy Barr.
Can you hit the mic, I think?
Red button's on.
Oh,
Hello?
there we go.
There we go. Okay. The Council, thanks for having us. Thank you, staff. My name is Andy Barr, and by way of full disclosure, I'm one of the private parties, commercial parties that's being talked to about the development. And we're ready to move forward with all due haste with the town. We're currently working on that. So we're committed. The balance of my comments, please regard them as being separate from that kind of private interest. These are more comments on the park proper in this particular case. First thing is, we're super excited. It's a terrific project. This is really a project that's decades in the making, since the 90s. It's in terrific compliance with the general plan, with the downtown specific plan, river revitalization strategy. We've known as a community that we've underutilized the river as a resource, and this particular project and this particular site is truly unique in town as a downtown hub portal connection to the river. So I don't think that can be overstated, as literally this is a unique property for that. Kind of second thing I wanted to highlight on was congratulations to the town on the decade of public engagement on this. The multiple times it's gone to design, it's gone looking for the feedback from the town or from the public in town. I think we have a design that really reflects what people have asked for. And kind of my third point here is the really interesting relation this has with the very large land trust project. It's a large project financially. They're really doing nothing over there, which is great. So we have this open space on the far side of the river, the wild side of town, if you will. We have the bridge that's coming in and connecting it to this portal downtown, this connection to the historic Truckee downtown to bring people to the river and then to drag people across the river, open space, class 1 trail, all of that. And I think there really is a reality of even though these are two separate projects, it's been a bit of a co-branded project. And I think that the land trust project is better with this park. This park is better with the land trust project. And I think that the fundraising that the land trust has gone through to successfully secure Truckee Springs is closely related to this interaction. So I think congratulations to everyone. It's a quality project. Anyway, we're in full support. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, Town Council. My name is Alicia Barr. Wearing my former Town Council hat. It's a lot more nerve-wracking on this side than it is up there. Anyways, I know Tony actually meant those to go out to everybody, but he missed the 2 o'clock deadline by like 6 minutes. So with his permission, I'm just going to read some of the excerpts from his letter that went out to Jan. The goal of creating a stronger public connection to the Truckee River from downtown Truckee was first identified in Truckee's first general plan, adopted in 1996. It was reiterated and reinforced in the downtown specific plan, which was adopted in 1997. The concept for the current site was fleshed out in the river revitalization strategy in 2006. Collectively, these 3 planning efforts set the bar for community engagement in Truckee, and in fact, the river revitalization strategy received statewide recognition from the American Planning Association, in large part because of the significant and successful public engagement. The recent hugely successful local fundraising effort by the Truckee Donner Land Trust to acquire Truckee Springs and build a pedestrian bridge linking it to the town park on the north side of the river is proof positive that the Truckee community still supports the town's early and current vision of a downtown connection to the Truckee River. If town plans are to be meaningful, it is imperative that the town act consistently to pursue and implement them. This triggers the private investment necessary to carry out our community's vision. Not only that, I continue to believe, both personally and professionally, that the combination of the West River Street Park and the Truckee Springs open space and trail will be a, quote, game changer in the best possible direction for our town. It will hit right in the sweet spot of enhancing the quality of life for our residents and bolstering our attractiveness to visitors. Sure, right now supporting our visitors might seem ridiculous, much as it did in 2006 in our last economic boom, but it didn't seem that way in 2010 when our downtown was struggling. I fear our economy is going to head that direction again. there's more in here, but I don't want to take too much time. And I just want to add my own thoughts that this is so exciting. This piece of property is so beautiful, and to connect it with that wild space across, like, our community's been begging for that public spot on the river, and to have it right in the middle of historic downtown, I think is just wonderful. So kudos to the decades of work that have gone in on this, and we're really excited to see this move forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other public comments? Seeing none, we will close public comment. And I understand in a deeper dive, what is the zoning on that property?
So clarification, dangers of looking at small screens when we're all used to big ones on our desk. It is downtown commercial, so housing would not be allowed unless it's mixed use currently.
Thank you. All right, council discussion. Councilmember Klofstad.
Well, I have, I really appreciate this overview and getting all the background and understanding of the very long process this site has been through, and the additional comments from the community have been very beneficial. As I stated during our retreat, I'm very supportive of moving the park project forward. I think it is the highest and best use of this property for all the reasons outlined on slide 2 of Nola's presentation. So I'm in full support of extending or amending this contract and the contingency authorization.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Pallavi.
The only good thing about being up here, Alicia, that you get to miss is they have to listen to you, right? So I did prepare some remarks, and unfortunately, everybody's going to have to listen. But I want to start out really quickly with saying I do agree very much so with the project goals. I very much like parks. What I don't like is bad budget ROI. And it's more that I simply don't place this particular CIP project as such a high priority when compared to the many other CIP projects coming before us. In addition, the phasing doesn't sit well with me, and the conditions have changed. I'd like to read a couple quotes that I pulled off the Truckee Donner Land Trust's website today. So the Truckee Donner Land Trust, working closely with the town of Truckee, is now under contract to purchase Truckee Springs, preserving and opening this previously inaccessible land forever as natural open space for public enjoyment. Again, we're starting to tick off goals. The timing of this conservation effort couldn't be more perfect. Concern that Truckee is losing its charm, character, and funkiness has grown in recent years. Protecting open space in the downtown core, rather than building yet another subdivision, will help preserve what we love about this place. With regard to adding of the up to 67 acres, the new portion of the property has numerous river access points, riparian habitat, mixed conifer forest, and a beautiful meadow. And to quote the famous Tony Lashbrook, who's been brought up a couple times tonight, this is his quote on the Land Trust website. The Land Trust acquisition of this property is a total game changer for Truckee. Since the creation of the Downtown Specific Plan more than 20 years ago, a riverfront park has been envisioned to serve as an anchor for the town. So I'm taking all of those comments to be referring to Truckee Springs on the south side of the river. Again, 67 acres, providing many of the project goals that were up on the screen in slide number 3. The regional park, less than 1 mile away, offers 62 acres of recreational facilities that include large and small ball fields, picnic areas, et cetera, nature trails, tennis, volleyball, disc golf, playground, etc. My point here is that we have over 120 acres of passive river celebrating parklands, all within 1 to 1.5 miles of this $5 million park that we want to build. Furthermore, we're going to spend over $500,000 from an economic development fund to activate this park with more enterprise that will create service wage level jobs. I don't remember that funding more service sector jobs was a part of our goals when we discussed that in our recent planning session. Plus, there's another $2 million in general fund. None of the future expenses including the 20 million that none of the future expenses, including the 20 million that we've already committed to investing in this zone between all of those projects that we've discussed, West River Street, Truckee Springs, et cetera. We're not sort of taking that big picture, right? And that's where my heat map sort of comes in, is how much should we be investing in any specific part of town? And I want to take a step back and look at some bigger constraints. We're looking to fund microtransit to the tune of $2 million a year, which we currently don't have. We have countless infrastructure and roadway CIP projects that are unfunded, but will alleviate some of the very circulation, traffic, pedestrian, and bike safety issues that have chronically plagued many of our streets, and we've spoken again about tonight. We have a deed restriction goal of 10% of our housing stock, which will take approximately $95 million to achieve. And we are doing all of this within shaky economic ground of potentially declining property tax revenues over the next 5 years. I'm bringing up these points to highlight two main issues. One, very simply, I don't believe this park is necessary at this time, is a good use of scarce financial resources, and it does not achieve any of our council priorities that can't be pointed to as being accomplished on the south side of the river. That is really important to me. Within that lens, I'm opposed to proceeding with the park in its current form, and if desired, can discuss an alternative vision that still includes a pocket park for Bridge Landing with some minimal deed-restricted housing, improved streetscape, and no commercial activations. If you want to talk about that vision, let's do it. But I'll let that go, since I'm likely to be outvoted anyways, and we have had many conversations about this. If we are to proceed with the park and the agenda item in front of us, I actually don't believe we are going far enough, and I'd like to see this project improve, and yes, cost more money. I'm a proponent for adding restrooms and garbage to this site for many reasons, but none more important than we need to lead and we need to prepare our infrastructure for future uses and impacts. If this is truly going to be the activation that we all are dreaming of, people need to go to the bathroom. My other concern is the commercial developments on either side of the park. And no offense to anybody in the room, we're all friends, just concerns. Their timing, their deliverability on the promises we have heard, the economic feasibility, the restroom issues, et cetera. For this reason, if we do proceed, I'd like to put very tight guardrails on the commercial aspects of this project with annual progress reports and a full performance requirement within 3 years of park completion. If the commercial entities don't deliver, we have let another good idea and project go to waste. I'd like to ensure there are performance guarantees and progress being made within reasonable time frames. So if one of the developers is not going to perform, we can pivot quickly and not let this site sit unfinished for more than 10 years. Currently, it will sit unfinished in a sort of perpetual state of construction for what we just heard of 5 to 6 years from construction. So we're looking at maybe 7 to 8 years if we're lucky. I'd also like to see this design contract amendment include a rendering of the same site plan with the removal of the western building and replaced with more park. The reason why I'm proposing that very specifically is because the western parcel in my mind is significantly less productive if you don't own the property adjacent to it, right? So if we end up with something in there, we need to be able to pivot quickly. It would make the most sense to just flow that into park. The eastern parcel is different. So in conclusion, I'd like to revisit my vision for everybody on this one. Bring the current park design down to size by not digging out the big bowl, restoring the bank and site as necessary. Do a little housing, whether it's mixed use or not, on the eastern parcel, nothing major and something that still celebrates the river. Take the $2 million from the general fund, split it between microtransit and the library. I did say that. And let's get those two projects done, cracked, and on their way. And then we can revisit if we need a 1 acre park across the river from 67 acres and within a mile of 120 acres. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Pallavi. Councilmember Zabriskie.
I'd like to think that Vice Mayor's Pallavi, wasn't moving towards the library, he was always there. So
Just money. I'm just taking $2 million and giving it to him. No questions asked.
yeah, yes, the new library is very dear to my heart, but also this West River Park. I'd looked at other parks online, of course. I didn't go visit them today, but I looked at Bend, Oregon's Deschutes, their River Parkway on both sides of the river. Durango's Animas River, their Greenway on both sides of the river. Heck, Reno's Parkway on both sides of the river. Idaho Falls has the Snake River Greenbelt, and then the town of Boise has a park river on both sides of the river. And those parkways are just spectacular. They identify the towns. They make those places much richer places to live. And I wish we had that in Truckee. We don't. About the only thing we have is this 1.5 acres of town land. And then we have some land down by where Donner Creek comes in. I'm ready to move forward on this. I think it's really important. I think the town is going to get back so much more than it puts into this, that we should go forward with the staff recommendations.
Thank you, Councilmember Zabriskie. Thank you, Vice Mayor Pallavi. I appreciate your deep dive and, all the different ways you've thought about it. Thanks to town staff, both here now and who sat in your chairs before you to get us to this point. I will go out and say that I am supportive of these actions. At our work plan session, I shared some of the concerns that Vice Mayor Pallavi shared, and is this the right place to be spending this money at this time? Since that point, I've had a lot of conversations about it with various folks, business owners, community members, and there is a lot of support for this. It's something we don't currently have in our downtown area. While there will be open space across the street, this provides something a little bit different in ways to activate this space. I also see a benefit of our future transit center not being that far away. Well, yes, the regional park isn't that much farther. If you're a visitor, you've just taken the bus, maybe you're waiting to get on a different bus, this would be an easy way to, walk across the street, sit by the river. Anyway, I think that this would be a really great opportunity that could help revitalize this area. We've talked a lot about West River Street, and yes, we're putting a lot of investment in it, but that is part of what we've talked about in the general plan of also, changing the dynamics there, and this could help be a catalyst project as staff identified too. So I will move on from that.
So can we go back 1 second? So I knew my plan's not a go, right? We already went through that. I just wanted to make that clear for the public. But so what I didn't hear from any three of you was anything about enhancements to this contract. So restrooms, is that important to you? Do you want to see that in this new design? Contingencies for private party removal, right? So my point is, if we're going to move this thing forward, are we going to move it forward holistically and plan for the worst and have a design that achieves that? Or are we going to constantly be tweaking this if and when something changes in the conditions that were being presented? This is a 1.2 acre site with 3 parties trying to fit 4 parties, actually, because we have a bridge, trying to fit things into 1.2 acres. There's a lot that can go wrong here. So I just want to be really clear. Are you just saying, yep, great, move forward? Or are you saying, yep, great, move forward, but here are the private party guardrails. Yes, or no, I don't want restrooms. Yes or no, I want to see a design that both includes or excludes private development.
I'd be happy to respond. I'm glad you brought it up. Yes, I think we will need restrooms. But I realize that's been a constant issue with the Legacy Trail going back far before my time. part of the reason I want to move forward with it as it is on the timing issue, because I do appreciate both what you're raising in terms of the bowl and in terms of the commercial operations, which I see as helping to reduce the cost of the project. I mean, they're paying money to be there. And I saw those sums of money and paid attention to them. I would be for leaving the bowl out, except we just had that discussion and we decided to keep it in. I mean, I feel like I wasn't that excited about the bowl, but we had a unanimous vote for it. And so I'm concerned about the comments from staff about there's timelines, there's deadlines on some of these grants. So that's kind of to say, for me, it's a matter of timing and how much time do we spend revisiting this.
So I heard very clearly that I agree with the plan for the milestones that staff outlined in this. I think that's absolutely critical, and they're negotiating to that point. Perhaps I like your timeline better, but we also need to make sure that we are negotiating in good faith. So I would say where we could, we moving that up, particularly since we're going to have a park there without restroom facilities. That is a real concern. I see that challenge every day across the street from my house with Donner Lake, right? So perhaps we do need to consider what our options A and B are with that, short-term, long-term. We could do porta potties short-term until things are built, but is that really cost-effective? I trust staff to investigate those options, but perhaps as part of this, we need to include that as part of the direction, that accommodating user restrooms in the interim is pretty important, and also making sure that that facility that they're building on the east side that would include the restrooms are accessible at the hours that we think the park would be utilized. You know, it doesn't do us any good to have restrooms that close at 6 o'clock if people are going to be there until 10. So I agree with all of those things, but I still think the basic design with the two anchor businesses to activate it and restoring that slope, I believe, is really key to connecting, to creating that river connection that those other parks that you researched share. That is the key to me, and having that direct access.
Can I maybe just clarify something? So I wasn't referring to the bowl. I don't care about the bowl. The bowl can stay. I was referring to basically taking the design and having sort of like plan B, right? So we're going to design, right? And our design is basically predicated on what we're seeing here. 2 buildings on the east and west side, a park in the middle, a bridge landing. All I'm saying is it's a lot easier if we're going to go to design to have plan B, which basically says, they don't want to develop it because it's going to cost $5 million and they don't want to spend $5 million right now. So instead of then this whole thing coming back to us and saying, okay, what do we do now? At the very minimum, we have a design that helps us through that process, right? That's all I'm really saying, is expanding the design to have sort of like a plan B.
So I think we've put up on the screen a slide that may help you with that conversation. I think what we're hearing from Council or Vice Mayor Pallavi is that building B here, he's wishing to see the full design of the park expand into that footprint. So should building B not become a reality, you already have the design for the park. And I think what he's saying is, in his viewpoint, building B, that location, isn't conducive to another commercial spot if you don't own the adjacent building. So that means there isn't really another potential developer, is what I heard from him.
So
you heard that accurately. Thank you for translating.
So to staff, do you have any estimate of what that might cost and what would the timeline be?
Yeah, so what I would, so in the scenario that Councilmember Pallavi played out, timing is everything, right? So if within the next few months, it was clear that, the prospective buyers that are here tonight that said they're interested in it, if something changed and they're no longer interested in it, and that became clear to us, then getting something built into this plan set for construction next summer would be feasible. If that didn't play out, and let's say it's 2 years from now, let's say we put a purchase and sale agreement together and ultimately that project doesn't go forward for some reason, then we would be doing whatever needs to be done on that property as a standalone kind of follow-up project, if you will. So I think my suggestion would be, if we want to envision what could happen in a park as an expansion of the park now on that property, that we do it at a conceptual level as compared to putting tens of thousands of dollars into full-on construction drawings that are unnecessary if the private development happens. So I think what we could do is we could talk to the development team, say, hey, what if at a concept level, site B doesn't end up being a development site? How might we use that as parkland? I think we could do that at a fairly low cost. And then if, within, months, we were to find out that that property's no longer of interest, which I doubt that'll be the case, but should that materialize, then we could potentially go a step further and actually, construct that as a park, as part of this project. So.
Thank you. That's helpful. I will jump in. I'm supportive of that approach. That makes a lot of sense. And Vice Mayor Pallavi, you're right. If it's not going to be developed into a commercial property, let's continue the park. So I would support that. I'm also supportive of having guardrails for development of the properties, timelines, because we really do want to see that activated. So I support that. And restrooms, continue to, be creative and look for ways to partner or have temporary structures until we get other buildings. I support that as well.
Yeah, and what I would suspect we would do is we would potentially look at Site B as a restroom location. If the restroom deal on Site C doesn't kind of meet our satisfaction, and Site B ends up not being developed. But
that's a lot of restrooms. All right, so Councilmember Zabriskie, back to you. What thoughts on restrooms, the conceptual park on B, and
I'm thinking back to the public workshops that were held where the public was in favor of having these sorts of commercial operations at bookending the park. And then I'm looking at the people who are going to develop them, and I feel more confident about this is what's going to happen, and I don't want to disappoint all the people that attended those workshops and their vision. On the same hand, on the other hand, I really appreciate what's being said by Vice Mayor Pallavi, and I'm fine with adopting staff's recommendation with the additional requirement for the creation of a conceptual park plan for sites B and C in the event they don't meet their milestones.
sounds like we have consensus. Well,
and then the porta potty, of course.
All right. Can you put the recommendation action slides back on? So would somebody like to make a motion adding what you just said, Councilmember Zabriskie?
Sure. I recommend that we authorize the town manager to execute a contract amendment in the amount of $124,822 with Melton Design Group to complete the West River Street Park design for a not to exceed contract amount of $523,899.13, and then also authorize a contingency budget of $31,633 for a total authorized expenditure of $555,532.13 on the design contract, subject to the additional requirement that a conceptual park plan be developed for the B and C sites in the event those developments do not meet their milestones.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
That is 3-1. Thank you very much. It passes. All right, with that, we have one more item. I would suggest maybe we take a quick bathroom break.
No, I'm working through it.
I'm in charge, Vice Mayor Pallavi. We can talk next year. We'll do a quick bathroom break, and then we can eat dinner during closed session since we have one item left.
Yes.
All right. I should use my microphone. We will move on to item 7.4, Annual Report on Assembly Bill 1600, Traffic and Facility Impact Fee, Public Hearing, and Fee Adjustments. Take it away, Dan.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, so this agenda item is before you. It's a requirement of the kind of ongoing upkeep of our traffic impact fee program that we have an annual report on the revenues and expenditures from the prior year, and that we also codify the expected fees for the upcoming year. So that's what this item is for. We have two resolutions in front of you tonight that we're recommending for adoption. One of them would authorize you to hold on to funds that were collected more than 5 years ago in the fee program. The second one would actually adjust a grandfathering clause that's in our fee program related to getting credit for prior uses that used to be on a property, and I'll talk about that more in a moment. So in the fiscal year 2021-2022 time period, we collected $1,376,070 in fees, and we interestingly had an interest loss that year, but I'm told that it's, and by Nikki, that it's more of an update in accounting standard requirements that caused that. So it's maybe a paper loss as opposed to a cash loss, but if there's more questions on that, Nikki could explain it, because I surely cannot. And we expended $747,588 in that same fiscal year. Projects we worked on were the Pioneer Trail Bridge Street Extension Project, a little bit of the downtown parking easement acquisition, but it was a very minor component of that, and it was more on the street improvement side of it. And the Church Street Extension Project, which is partially under construction, partially completed, will be completed this upcoming summer. And then the Bridge Street, West River Street, Donner Pass Road intersection project. We also have facilities impact fees. So what these fees are intended to do is offset the facility impact that is created by new development. So as the population grows, new police services, new police officers are needed, that they generate the need for office space. New roads are built, that generates the need for new corporation yard facilities, those types of things. So in our facilities impact fee program, we collected $791,878 in 21-22, and we actually gained interest in 21-22 on that fund balance. We expended $102,763 in that year, and that money, some of that money went to the Public Service Center garage project up at the Courtyard, and some of that went to the Church Street Extension project for some of the drainage improvements that went along with that project. So again, traffic impact fee summary. This is one of the components of the AB 1600 legislation, is that if you collect revenue in excess of 5 years ago, you need to do one of two things with that. One thing, it would be to return it to those from whom you collected it. The other would be to make findings that the money is still needed for projects that have not yet been constructed. So that's what we're recommending that you do tonight, is make those findings as compared to returning that money. So the Resolution 2023-07 would make findings to retain $723,669 of traffic impact fees that were collected in excess of 5 years ago. And the specific findings are contained in the resolution that would allow you to retain those funds. On the facilities impact fee summary, the current fund balance in that account is $2.5 million. Revenues expended in the last 5 years were $2.8 million. So we don't have this same issue with this account where we have revenue in excess of what was collected over the last 5 years that is still in our fund balance. So that no findings are necessary for this account. What we are also recommending in Resolution 2023-07 is an inflationary adjustment to the fees that are being collected. So in our fee program resolution, it identifies using the construction cost index from the engineering news record as the index by which we do inflationary adjustments to the fee program. So we're recommending that we do that, and the inflationary adjustment in the engineering news record construction cost index for the relevant time period was 7.14%. What that would do is that would increase fees 6% and change. The reason for the discrepancy there is projects that are in our fee program that have already been constructed where we have known construction costs, we don't apply that inflationary adjustment to those projects. We apply it only to projects that have not yet been constructed. So by the time you go through the math on that, the actual increase is less than the inflation adjustment. So on the traffic impact fees, the net result of that would be moving from an $8,264 fee on a standard home, which would be a home of about 2,300 square feet, to a proposed fee of $8,786 on that same size home. And again, that correlates to a 6.32% increase. Resolution 2023-08 would recommend, or is a recommendation to increase this grandfathering time period from 2 years to 10 years. So what we're talking about here, I'll use the Truckee lumberyard as an example. So the lumberyard moved to a new location, and the current owner of the lumberyard wants to change the use of the lumberyard to something else. So at the current location, if the buildings sit vacant and unused for more than 2 years, they lose this grandfathered status from a fee standpoint. What the grandfathered status is if you take the lumberyard square footage and you apply the lumberyard, you figure out what the fee would be for that, and let's say that's $200,000 in today's dollars with the current fee structure. And let's say they were to instead put in a new use that just by itself generates $300,000 in fees. If they're grandfathered under with the current use, then they can, rather than pay $300,000 to the town, they pay $300,000 less the $200,000 for a net of $100,000. If the use goes on for more than if the lack of use goes on for more than 2 years, under our current program, that grandfathered status falls away, and to reuse the property, you would not get the benefit of that fee credit. So what we're suggesting is that we extend the time period, which is currently 2 years, to be a 10-year time period. And the reason for that is we think the intent of the original fee program was to provide property owners with the kind of the benefit of this grandfathered status, if you will. The reality is that a 2-year time period can be short for some property owners to, vacate one property and then reactivate it into some other type of use for various reasons. So this would provide a more generous time period for that to occur. So the recommendation is that you conduct the fiscal year 21-22 traffic impact fee public hearing, that you adopt resolution 2023-07, which would retain the funds that have been on deposit in excess of 5 years in the traffic impact fee program, and that you adopt resolution 2023-08, which would increase this grandfathering time period from 2 years to 10 years.
Thank you very much, Dan. All right, to council questions. Vice Mayor Pallavi.
Just one. Why going from 2 to 10? I guess just where did that come from? And is that common practice in other jurisdictions? Or why were we at such a why such a discrepancy? I mean, if you were like, let's go from 2 to 4, sure, but 2 to 10 is pretty big.
It is. I'd say it's probably erring on the side of the property owner to be able to, gain that credit against their fees as opposed to not erring on the side of the property owner.
Does it make redevelopment? It makes redevelopment slightly more affordable, obviously, right? Potentially.
Yeah, it's hard to say. You could argue that by providing the longer time period, maybe people are less motivated to redevelop as quickly. The other aspect is, well, gee, if it's such a short time period that you exceed it, then it's like, heck, I'm not going to get the benefit anyway. So, maybe it creates an impediment. It could probably be argued both ways.
What's the going rate like in other jurisdictions?
I don't know.
Oh.
Yeah.
You guys just made this up?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks for being honest.
Yeah.
Okay. No
Any
further
other questions?
No.
All right.
No.
Councilmember Zabriskie.
Nailed it.
Yeah, so who gets the impact fees from Palisades when they expand?
Placer County.
Oh, Placer County. Okay. I don't have any questions to this particular update, annual report, but I was looking at the Exhibit 5, the projects, and I was wondering if you had any thoughts on what this change in state policies moving from level of service to VMTs, what we might see. And one example that prompted my thought and question on this is converting the one-lane roundabout to a two-lane roundabout, which was the very issue that was brought up at the beginning in terms of how do we move all this ski traffic through town. But then again, for local transportation, for local use of vehicles, on local roundabouts, expanding the lanes seems tailored to private automobiles, responding to the local increase in population. So I just want the benefit of your experience before you retire.
Well, thanks, but don't put me in the grave just yet. So,
okay.
So our current draft general plan has a policy in it that basically calls for us as the town to create a VMT mitigation fee program. And it also identifies, I believe, the continuation of our traffic impact fee program. So what I would anticipate is within a year or two of the general plan adoption, we would go through a comprehensive update of our traffic impact fee program and look at not only traffic congestion, which is what we've looked at in the past, but also look at VMT and projects that would be designed to reduce VMT, and then use that venue, if you will, to look at our project list and evaluate what we can do with projects to implement VMT reduction, and then figure out what's an equitable way to pass some of that cost on to new development, recognizing that some of that cost in all likelihood lies with the existing community as well.
Okay, thank you. Those are all my questions.
Councilmember Klofstad?
No, my only question was the 7.14% inflation and then our translating 6.32, but you answered that, so thank you.
And I had a question on the 2 versus 10, so appreciate the insight on that. So with that, we will open it up to public comment. Seeing none, we will close public comment and bring it back up here. Vice Mayor Pallavi.
I'm ready to move. I don't have any changes.
Does anyone have any thoughts? Seeing none, Vice Mayor Pallavi, I say go ahead.
Make a motion that we adopt the recommendations as agendized in front of us.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That passes unanimously. Thank you very much, Dan. All right, with that, we will move on to council member reports. I'm going to look to my left. Councilmember Zabriskie, are you ready?
Attended the Truckee River Basin Watershed Group meeting at the end of January. We looked at reservoir levels and stream flows, and a particular interest was in water sports. The river companies, the fly fishers, the boaters were all interested. Basically, even with all this heavy precipitation, it's actually going to have the effect of reducing demand for water in Nevada, and what we're likely to see is high levels in the upper elevation reservoirs and some drainage out of Boca and Prosser as we enter the summer. Went to Steve Randall's retirement. The rec center is going to bear his name in honor of his retirement, or in honor of his service. Attended the TNT Transportation Management Association meeting. Discussion about extending the shuttle services to the Truckee High School to help reduce the traffic demand. It was pointed out that would add at least 10 minutes and then interfere with the back and forth of the shuttle operation. So it doesn't sound like that's going to happen. We had a presentation by Waldorf Astoria on a big project they're going to do at the old Biltmore on State Line. Alfred updated us on the ridership, same as he did here. Palisades is experiencing the same thing, tremendous increase in ridership and shared rides. Attended the local Democrats Club where Hardy Bullock announced he's running for re-election. He spoke to Shelters for the Unhoused, county's plans to create housing at the U.S. Forest Service Hobart Mills work camp. So we get a little bit of leapfrog action there on housing. And then he also shared with us the county putting in $1 million for pre-construction costs on the new library. The LAFCO meeting, there was a LAFCO budget subcommittee meeting, and we're probably going to see here at the town a budget that would increase our contribution to LAFCO from $72,000 a year to $90,000 a year, largely to support the consulting contract to look at all the fire districts in the county in terms of their emergency response capabilities. Attended the Prosser Firewise community meeting where they're planning for fuel reduction and home hardening for the summer, and then how to translate that into lower insurance rates. Met with Hillary Hobbs, and I've spoken with Christina Kind about obtaining wage distribution data for the town of Truckee to help us plan housing. I met with the mobile home inspector for housing and community development, and then with the Donner Creek manager, find out about any reports of substandard mobile homes, and they said there were none. I have had multiple conversations with different constituents about moving West River Industry over to the Jigger Ranch Road area. Met with Kathy Foley and helped volunteer at their winter shelter, serving breakfast, and discuss the issues with the homeless in response to the comments and complaints we received at the last council meeting. One point she made was, because of all the snow, it's not that there's more homeless in town, it's just they don't have any place to hide. They only have a couple places where it's warm enough and dry enough for them to sleep, and it just happens to be in front of the vice mayor's store, for one, and across the street from where kids are going for community art education. And so the big issue remains finding a spot. She certainly agrees where they are now is not the best one. Went to the local library for a presentation of a cookbook by local residents, and then some of you may know Letitia Aguilar runs Letty's preschool and received several community awards in years past. She's published a new book on patriarchy, essentially growing up in a very male-dominated household and how she broke away from that. And then I've talked with Paco Lindsay about bike path safety, which is, I think is going to be coming up pretty quickly. I guess we want to be ready for summer and the e-bikes. That's it. Thanks.
Sounds like you've been busy. Thank you for that update. Councilmember Klofstad?
Well, I haven't been that busy. So I've been in recovery mode, but we all did attend the priority setting workshop, and then straight from there I went to the single-use water bottle stakeholder meeting, which, you know, we had a very good discussion and, you know, continuing along the progress, and they asked a lot of good questions that staff is now back working on answering. I think much of that was repeated at the community-wide workshop, which I was not able to attend, but it sounds like it was well attended. And we do have pretty consistent support moving forward in the direction that we're going. It took me 3 separate sections, but I did actually watch the entire last Planning Commission meeting on Waldorf. I had to take a few breaks. I was really grateful that I got to. Unlike the people in attendance in person. Placer County Biomass meeting, I attended that, and we're really working towards this consortium on, it's March 6th now, right? That's where we've landed, I'm pretty sure, where we're trying to bring in some presenters from the industry that can help promote these concepts and ideas, and hopefully, you know, make some contacts and connections and start getting some things more in motion. I think there's a lot of interest, there's a lot of talk, but there's not a lot of action, and that's where we're trying to get through this. So that the placer biomass, that's the regional one that I'm talking about. I also met with the new TSA board member, Scott Williams, and had a great conversation with him about joining CTA, as well as about possible interest in expanding some of the access and opportunities on Jorger for industry. It was a very productive conversation, and have had conversations with a few other hospital staff about joining CTA as well subsequent to that. Attended a REACH Code seminar specifically about how to unlock REACH Code access to existing buildings. And this was facilitated by, I think it was Civic Wall, but it had presenters from 3 different organizations, one of them being the County of Marin, that recognized that most of their area, these 3 organizations or municipalities, most of their area was already fully built out. And so they had instigated REACH codes already on new construction, but recognized that impact to reducing their greenhouse gas emissions and reaching their targets was negligible. And so they took the leap to create REACH codes for existing buildings. So they had some very great lessons learned. I found it very, very informative, and ultimately they were successful. So I'm hoping we will be as well. And today I attended a planning meeting for Kid Zone, continuing to try to help them through their phasing and cost estimating, and supporting them in their endeavors to provide expanded services to our community.
Thank you very much, Vice Mayor Pallavi.
Told you did more than me, and you still had surgery that whole time, so. Continuing on the Placer County theme of lots of talk and not a lot of action, Mayor Romack and I attended the Housing Hub concept workshop because we should create another organization to work on housing with another board and another funding stream. But that's their idea. That was with Jen, Hillary, and Mayor Romack and I. We listened. spoke with a couple folks about the West River project, obviously, and attended the TDMA meeting, Truckee Downtown Merchants Association meeting, more as a member of the Truckee Downtown Merchants Association. But of course, we all wear many hats all the time, so ended up fielding many other questions about town work and West River Street construction. I think they're all chomping at the bit to get as much information as they can as that starts to ramp up, and a lot of concern on the phasing of the Bridge Street lights and that project and how it ties in with West River. So I think more to be determined on that one. And in general, just a lot of very interesting as I now spend more time downtown, the garbage issues, the waste management issues, snow removal and snow storage issues, all common themes during that meeting. So I provided some answers and created a lot of questions, but very productive. That's it.
Thank you very much. All right, let's see. I was at a meeting on the Housing Hub, as Vice Mayor Pallavi shared already. Also presented at the Nevada County Board of Supervisors workshop. They had a State of the Cities, so an opportunity for Truckee, Grass Valley, and Nevada City. We each got 5 minutes to talk about our council goals and, kind of what we've been working on. So Jen and I were both there and got to discuss what we've been doing. And it sounds like Grass Valley is doing a Lease to Locals program modeled after ours. So that's exciting. We're being innovative and others are paying attention. We also talked about, collaboration and lots of other, things we're all thinking about in Nevada County. They did also, one of the supervisors did ask, what do you think is something that sets you apart from maybe the other jurisdictions? And, Jen brought up our geography and our snow, our tourism economy, those sorts of things. So just a reminder of we face some different issues here. Attended the work plan, as you mentioned. Councilmember Zabriskie and I were both at the Truckee Police ceremony a while ago. We got to see Chief get officially sworn in, along with a few other officers getting officially sworn in, some promotions and some awards. So that was really great to see. This room was packed with family members, so it was really neat, and you got to hear the different family members' names and a little bit about a lot of the officers and volunteers and staff. So kudos to you, Chief. It was a great ceremony. Attended a quarterly Mountain Housing Council meeting. There was discussion on what is coming in the future with JPA, Housing Hub, where does Mountain Housing Council fit in? So I think everybody is kind of looking with a critical eye of what is most needed for our region, while not establishing too many organizations that overlap. Also, it was discussed the Homeless Advisory Committee that Erica had brought up at our work plan session. So they are working to put together a committee of regional partners to act, my notes say, act as a strategic planning group to guide regional homeless services in the region. Also, I had lunch with Jessica Penman with the Truckee Chamber, so that was great to get to know her a little bit better and hear about some of her strategic plans that we've heard about here. Talked with Kathleen Egan about the library, some of what we heard earlier tonight. I attended the Placer traffic meeting, the Olympic Valley MAC and NITRAC that Jen mentioned earlier. You covered it well, so I don't need to add anything. Participated in a city selection committee meeting this morning. It was 5 minutes. It's just something the mayor has to serve on, and took 5 minutes to finish. Nothing exciting happened. And then also today I met Alice Wong, a board member with the Tahoe Forest Hospital Board. She's the chair, I believe, right now. So we talked through a lot of topics, microtransit, their master plan, how it fits in with our plans, along with some other issues. So that was great to get a chance to talk with her. And that was it. All right. Yeah, that's enough. So we will move now into closed session, our conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation of one case, Government Code Section 54956.9.